Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, we invite you to listen to part 5 of the series. Chapter 65, A Baiha City, a home of Tross machinery. Chapter 65 is Chapter 65, A Baiha City, a home of Tross machinery. White Tower floating land, Baiha City. As one of the 5 major cities under the jurisdiction of White Tower floating land, Baiha City had developed for a longer time than Jongwon City, a fact evident from the respective population sizes of the two cities. Now, with a total population exceeding 25 million, Baiha City was second only to Baita City among the 5 cities of White Tower floating land. In the city center of Baiha City, Baiha Torch City, the medium-sized Blaze Market was the most prosperous commercial area. The number of merchant shops in Blaze Market far exceeded those in Dongjeong Mall. Struggling to squeeze through the crowd, a Song Chi's face bore a hint of helplessness. After awakening the seed of Torch, this was truly his first time experiencing the feeling of being packed like sardines. The key issue was that most of the people around him were practitioners of the guidance technique with not low levels, possessing physical strength far beyond that of ordinary people, making the jostling truly a literal flesh-to-flesh experience, which was quite uncomfortable. However, there was no helping it, as the mall's official rules strictly prohibited the use of spectral energy inside the premises, so everyone had to comply. Yet this suited his intentions perfectly. He specifically chose to come to Baiha City during the peak of the crowd and selected the highly popular Baiha Mall because this was the result he wanted. The more customers there were, and the denser the crowd, the easier it was to sow confusion and make a quiet exit using the ruins market after selling off all his materials. Instead of going to the top floor, Song Chi chose the middle and lower floors where people were more numerous. Inside a medium-sized shop named Tross Mechanical Home, Song Chi summoned the Songcheong at the Torch Warship's designated docking area. Its span had expanded to nearly 20 meters after being upgraded to a spectral airship, so he could load all the resources he purchased at the trade fair onto the ship in one trip, saving him quite a bit of trouble. 50 tons of mithril plus 10 tons of Zhenjin plus 215 millennium ice crystals plus 200 tons of uranium ore. As one type of material after another was unloaded from the airship, the shop staff quickly tallied the quantities of each resource. Once all the differentials bought in the ruins market were offloaded, an employee rapidly calculated their value and reported it. "Sir, the market value of these resources you provided is 2,480 strands of zero-rank floating land origin. Based on the 70% purchase price, that would be 1,736 strands. If you have no objections." Before the clerk beside him could finish, Song Chi cut him off. 70% of the market value for purchase. Isn't that a bit low? In his view, 2,500 strands of zero-rank floating land origin was not a small sum, and a reduction to 70% was excessively low. However, the clerk didn't seem to think so. He pursed his lips, and his smile remained unchanged, but Song Chi could see a hint of indifference in his eyes, showing that he did not take Song Chi's words seriously. Song Chi frowned, feeling inwardly displeased but not saying much else. He instead began to gather the spectral energy within his body at his throat. The mall's regulations prohibited using spectral energy to fight, but using it to summon torch warships, to amplify his own voice, or enhance his hearing was not restricted. As he opened his mouth, a resonant shout suddenly rang throughout the entire shop. "Is the manager here?" Because he had deliberately altered his voice, the words he spoke sounded particularly hoarse, catching the attention of all the customers in the shop. In front of him, the male clerk who had maintained a superficial smile until now suddenly looked stern, and his tone became elevated. "Sir, please don't disturb the shopping experience of other customers. If you cannot accept our store's purchase price, you are welcome to try other shops." With a mask hiding his expression, onlookers could not discern Song Chi's feelings, but his complexion visibly darkened. Without saying anything further, he turned and headed toward the store exit. Given such poor service, he lost any desire to stay a moment longer. What he had were void crystals, considered rare resources. Why bother insisting on trading here when he could go elsewhere? Search the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. As for showing off and putting someone in their place, sorry, but he had no desire to show off in front of someone who hadn't even awakened their seed of torch. However, just as he was turning away, he was called by the shop manager who had appeared unexpectedly. Judging by the manager's dark expression, this was probably not the first time he had encountered such a situation. Making such a basic mistake over and over yet still being allowed to stay suggested the identity of the young clerk. It was very likely that he was a relative, perhaps the manager's nephew or grandson. Sir, I am truly sorry for our poor hospitality. To show our apologies, we are willing to purchase all the materials you have provided at market price without any sort of discount. Upon hearing this, Song Chi paused. With market price purchasing, he could make quite a bit more, so there was no need to hold a grudge against money. Moreover, the young clerk was already apologizing under the stern gaze of the manager. Considering these factors, he decided to stop and stay. In a guest room within Tro's mechanical home, Song Chi and the manager were sitting together. After a brief chat, Song Chi gathered some basic information about the white manager sitting beside him. His name was Rock Tros and he was a member of the Tros family from Baiha City. The earlier young clerk turned out to be his sister's son, who was on vacation and said to be gaining life experience. As expected, Song Chi thought to himself. He might not have known much about Baiha City, but he was familiar with several of the top forces there. The Tros family was indeed one of the several prominent forces in Baiha City, which explained the young clerk's attitude. After a brief chat, he got to the main topic. Reaching behind him, he soon had a crystal the size of a thumb in his palm. Void crystal. Upon seeing the crystal in Song Chi's palm, Rock Tros exclaimed, and even with his nearly a century of experience, he seemed a bit flustered. No wonder, as void crystals were extremely rare. Though they had limited uses, seemingly required only for the enhancement of space-class warship components, their scarcity was the issue. After verifying the zero-rank void crystal, Rock Tros asked in a deep voice. Friend, may I know how many void crystals you currently have in your possession? Chapter 66 is the news. Chapter 66 is the news. Perhaps sensing that there might have been an issue with what he had just said, Rock Tros quickly added another line. No matter how many void crystals you have in your hands, the Tros mechanical family will take them all, including the batch of supplies you had before, all at the normal market price. Song Chi smiled, not at all surprised by this response. As someone who had received a formal education, he was well aware of the value of the void crystals. The fact that the other party was buying at market price didn't mean there was no profit to be made. Market price represented the average selling price, the price under normal sales conditions. Given the rarity of the void crystals, it wasn't difficult to find an eager buyer and such urgent. Buying orders were naturally not going to be at the normal market price, with an excess of 20 or 30% being quite common. Even encountering captains in extreme urgency who would be willing to pay double was not out of the question. However, such matters would obviously require time to find the right buyer and could not be resolved immediately, so selling at market price was already the best choice for Song Chi. However, he didn't rush to reveal the number of void crystals he had on hand but instead asked another question in a hoarse voice. We can discuss the details of the purchase slowly, but I want to ask, Shop Manager Rock, does your store sell those shipboard components that remove negative status? Or even just information on such components would suffice. Rock Tros fell into contemplation, not replying immediately, his gaze flickering as he seemed to be lost in thought. One thing Song Chi could be certain of was that among the problems Rock was considering, there was definitely one about what negative status his flagship had contracted. After about 5 seconds, Rock Tros finally spoke, but the news he gave was not promising. Shipboard components that remove negative states are not available in my store, however I do have a piece of information. But then his tone took an abrupt turn, recapturing Song Chi's curiosity. What news? Seeing no response from the other party, Song Chi quickly realized the situation and took out 200 zero-rank void crystals from his backpack, placing them on the wooden table between them. Seeing these 200 void crystals, Rock Tros's eyes showed some interest, but he ended up shaking his head and not speaking. Song Chi frowned and, not indulging further, reached out to take back the 200 zero-rank void crystals. At this, Rock-Tross, who had seemed quite composed just a moment ago, became somewhat anxious. There were many seeking to buy void crystals, and he didn't dare gamble. He extended his hand to stop him and said at the same time, "I received news the other day that the triennial Baiha auction is about to be held, scheduled for the morning 5 days from now. So what you mean is, this auction will feature shipboard components that clear negative effects, or is that just speculation?" Sir, the novel, F.8 website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This time, Rock-Tross nodded quickly. "Definite. This auction will include one blue quality component capable of purifying negative effects." Under the mask, Song-Chi pondered thoughtfully, murmuring to himself, a blue quality component should be enough to cleanse the mark left behind by a first-rank void demon. With a definite answer, Song-Chi was in high spirits. "Thank you, manager. Then these 200 zero-rank void crystals and that batch of supplies are sold to your store. But I have one small request. Tell me, could the floating land origin gained from the previous batch of supplies be all exchanged for first rank?" Song-Chi asked with sincerity. He already had more than enough zero-rank floating land origins, well over 5,000 strands. Having so many was really of no use. To this request, Rock-Tross happily agreed. He had thought Song-Chi would make a much more unreasonable demand. Rock-Tross was quick to act. Not long after the deal was confirmed, he quickly had someone deliver 448 strands of first-rank floating land origin. After thanking him with a smile, Song-Chi soon left the Tross mechanical family and plunged into the crowd. At the Tross mechanical family, Rock-Tross's friendly demeanor was gone, and he listened expressionlessly to the report of the towering figure standing behind him. "Manager," the man vanished into the crowd and soon left no trace. "I have searched almost 3 entire floors of the mall and have not found any suspicious individuals." Rock-Tross, grabbing a few void crystals in his palm, fell silent for a while before speaking in a cold voice. "Keep looking for me. The old patriarch desperately needs the void crystals, and that man must have more than just those 200. If we can get enough void crystals to the old patriarch, I will have a great chance of taking control of the entire family. You must find this person for me. People the Tross family seeks must be found, alive or dead." As he spoke, Rock-Tross's facial expression seemed to contort. The reason he did not take action inside the shop was firstly to avoid affecting the reputation of the Tross family. After all, Baiha Mall was the largest blaze market in Baiha City, and once things got out of hand, even the power of the Tross family would struggle to suppress it. Secondly, he had already notified his men via a covert communication device, and members of his family's secret force were already fully deployed outside the shop. It was deemed almost certain his men could track down the target, and as soon as he left Baiha Mall, capturing him would just be a matter of speaking a word. However, this seemingly foolproof plan declared failure shortly after the man left the store, over 10 people losing track of one individual. It was not hard to imagine how furious Rock-Tross felt at that moment. As for these developments, Song-Chi, who had already returned home through the Jution Ruins market, naturally had no knowledge. He had set a special anchor point in his bedroom before heading to Baiha City, so he returned effortlessly from Baiha City to Jongwon City. In his bedroom, Song-Chi reconnected to the Jution Ruins market. With 5 days until the Baiha auction, he planned to stay in the ruins market for the time being, not only to prevent further attacks from small squads of void demons but also to acquire more void crystals, and it would also allow him to fully experience the effects of the All Attributes Cultivation Room's substantial 960% bonus. 5 days later, when he stepped out of the cultivation room again, a satisfied look was on Song-Chi's face. The significant 960% cultivation boost was indeed extraordinary. Even though Song-Chi's guidance technique had just advanced to LV7 not long ago, he could still feel a slight improvement over these 5 days. If it had not been for the appearance of 4 squads of void demons during these days, forcing Song-Chi to leave seclusion repeatedly, the cultivation effects might have been even better. Nevertheless, Song-Chi had accrued several hundred more void crystals. Subtracting the 200 sold to the Tross house, he still had nearly 1,200 in his possession. Chapter 67, The Baiha Auction, Seeking Follow-up Reading. Chapter 67 By her auction, seeking follow-up reading. After greeting his parents, Song-chi left his home and found a secluded spot to summon the Songcheong, then headed straight for Baiha City. The Blaze market in Baiha City was busier than ever today, as the triennial Baiha auction was set to be held today at the Heavenly River Auction Hall on the top floor of the market. Grim Tro stood below the docking platform of the torch warships at the top floor of the auction hall, his face flushed with excitement and awe. In just half an hour, he had already seen more than 50 spectral airships land one after another on the platform. Then looking at those 20-meter-long steel airships wrapped in thick armor, he felt a torrent of emotions inside him. This was what he aspired to in the future. As for cowering in his uncle's shop as a waiter, that was an absolute insult to him. Though his father was not a member of the powerful Tros family, he was a son-in-law who took his surname from his mother, also a member of the formidable Tros family. Far from having any complaints, Grim was glad to be a direct member of the Tros family. As Grim Tros was lost in his thoughts, another spectral airship, almost 20 meters in length, descended from the vault of heaven and landed precisely on the platform ahead, which was over 100 meters in diameter and could support the docking of Guardian-class spectral warships. For a moment, the market's ceremonial guard around the platform once again looked up in unison, welcoming the arrival of the spectral airship whose identity was concealed and whose body was enveloped in a dark spectral energy shield, making it impossible to discern even the color of its hull armor. Behind him, a look of solemnity instinctively appeared on Grim's face, and his heart tensed slightly. Based on the energy fluctuations emitted by the energy shield on the hull of the airship, it was obvious that the shield components it carried were not the standard spectral shields, and could possibly be of blue quality, since white quality energy shields are hardly capable of emitting such a level of energy fluctuation. And energy shields of at least blue quality, such a level of shield, could play a tremendous role even on those escort ships. Because of this, not only Grim Tros but many sharp-eyed people also concluded that these spectral airships' origins were anything but ordinary. Song-chi stepped off the Songcheong with a white mask still on his face, though it had become somewhat more humanized compared to 5 days earlier. After retracting the Songcheong into his ancestral aperture on his forehead, he followed a market patron directly to the Heavenly River Auction Hall. There were no so-called tickets. As long as one is a torch warship captain with a spectral airship or above, they automatically qualify to participate in the auction. Song-chi could understand this. With the convenience of the torch network, an always accessible virtual network for free communication and trading, why would many large markets insist on holding auctions if not to attract more people and make their own market more popular? Why would they turn away high-quality clients like a first-rank torch ship captain? Search the Nellfire.nt website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. As for those zero-rank torch ship captains who want to enter the auction, I'm sorry, but they must pay an entrance fee of 100 strands of zero-rank floating land origin, which also serves to indirectly raise the standard of the auction. The Heavenly River Auction Hall was vast, with rows of leather seats arranged in a circle, surrounding the square auction stage in the center. Above the numerous leather seats, there were more than 20 enclosed boxes specially reserved for second-rank or higher torch ship captains. Song-chi's peripheral vision swept over, and then his expression under the mask turned solemn. At this moment, more than 20 private boxes had lit up with 7, indicating that at least 7 second-rank or higher torch ship captains had arrived at the auction venue. Isn't it said online that the usual auctions in Baiha City only see about 2 or 3 second-rank torch ship captains? Why have so many turned up this time? Muttering to himself, Song-chi found an unoccupied leather seat, sat down, and quietly began to wait. With about half an hour left before the auction was to start, surely more torch ship captains would continue to arrive. It was just uncertain whether more second-rank torch ship captains would come. He closed his eyes and allowed his spirit to sink deep into his mind. Taking advantage of this time, Song-chi prepared to visualize the Dragon Spine Tyrant Welt mythical mech projection. This contemplation diagram was directly related to the future combat power of his Songcheong when it advanced to a higher class, and he had never slackened his visualization exercises. Whenever he had spare time, he basically devoted it to this task. Even though he had successfully engraved it, and his spiritual force would improve gradually even without deliberate visualization, could that be the same as actively concentrating and visualizing the engraving map? It was because of his regular active visualization that, over the course of 2 months, Song-chi had clearly felt an enhancement in his spiritual aspect, something that the automatic operation of the engraving map could never achieve. Take the battle with the Void Demon a few days ago, for example. Despite exerting all his might to deplete his spiritual force, he managed to hold on for nearly an hour. If it had been right after his awakening, he probably couldn't have lasted even half an hour. If he had let the engraving map run on its own for these 2 months, he guessed he might have held on for at most 40 minutes. That's the difference between being passive and active. As his spiritual force converged on the mech projection image under the engraved map, Song-chi's spiritual force was rapidly depleting, yet in this continuous consumption, his force of spirit was also slowly increasing. Suddenly, a series of exclamations nearby interrupted his visualization. When he opened his eyes, Song-chi quickly understood the reason behind those sounds of surprise. Just now, the 10th-second rank torch ship captain had entered the auction venue. The simultaneous attendance of 10th-second rank torch ship captains at this Tianhe auction was certainly not normal. Could it be that this auction has high-quality ship components, or extremely rare warship enhancement resources? Song-chi pondered thoughtfully, but after failing to come up with a reason, he quickly gave up. He did not attempt to visualize the engraving map again but sat upright and focused his gaze on the square auction stage below. Timing it out, the auction was about to officially begin. After about 2 more minutes passed, the figure leaped from high above. Thump. After a heavy impact sound, the figure landed precisely on the stone auction platform. As he lifted his gaze and surveyed his surroundings, Song-chi got a clear look at the figure's appearance. At the same time, a flash of solemnity appeared in his eyes, and a hint of gravity surfaced beneath them. The man had white hair, and his beard was no exception. His age was clearly not young. What surprised him and the guests in the auction venue was the formidable oppressive aura exuding from the white-haired old man. Despite being of advanced years, the fluctuations of vitality within his body were exceptionally strong. At least LV-20 in guidance technique, the second-rank torch ship captain. Chapter 68 Abnormal Status Purifier, please follow. Chapter 68 to Chapter 68 Abnormal Status Purifier, please follow. After a brief moment of surprise, Song-chi quickly came to an understanding. With so many second-rank torch ship captains attending, if the Baiha auction couldn't present a figure with enough deterrent power, it would be difficult to maintain order in the subsequent proceedings. Indeed, this was the case. The white-haired elder on the auction stage not only had astonishing strength, but his identity was also far from simple. John Tross, the patriarch of the Tross family, one of the 3 major affiliated families of Baiha Mall, was now 280 years old. Although he was nearing the end of his life, it was precisely this that keyed into his formidable deterrent power. A second-rank torch ship captain at the peak of his power who didn't have many years to live, truly angered, who could predict the extent of his frenzy. One should never provoke someone with 1 foot in the grave, for they have nothing left to lose. This logic is understood by all, so very few would dare to offend such individuals. Seeing that everyone had settled down, John Tross slowly began to speak. He was not only the deterrent of this auction, but also the host. The time has come, I declare the auction officially open. As he finished speaking, a staff member of the auction house came from behind the stage, and in an instant, nearly everyone's gaze fell upon the wooden box in the staff member's hands. It was clear that what the staff member was holding was the first auction item, and according to the procedures of most auction houses, the first item must be a fine piece that could stir the mood of the entire auction. The first item up for auction is a blue-quality engine, the Aurora Thermal engine. The attribute diagram is as follows. Aurora Thermal engine LV0. Quality blue. Consumption 3/S spectral energy points. Energy supply 24/S spectral energy points. Post-overload buffer 30 minutes. Energy pool 3000 points, can store 3000. Spectral energy points. Convertible Aurora Lava Stone Heart. Up rank requirement: 4 strands of 0 rank floating land origin, 400 energy points for 0 rank life course. After introducing the Aurora thermal engine, John Tross started the bidding. There is no set price for this Aurora thermal engine, to trade by barter only. Interested parties may use the bidding device on their seat to make an offer. Immediately, dozens of people in the auction house picked up the bidding devices and began to report their trade items through the devices to John Tross above. Of course, it might also be for the real owner behind the scenes who put forward the Aurora thermal engine. Search the ovalfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Honestly, Song Chi was quite interested. The Tsongcheong only lacked a high-quality engine component, and although a blue component couldn't be considered top quality, it was still a fine engine. If he could secure this Aurora thermal engine, he would then be able to continue enhancing the dark matter energy shield generator. Just over 20 days later, he was to explore the so-called Buluo civilization ruins with Shunqing. It was said that there was no danger within the ruins, but Shunqing had only explored the first level. Who knew whether the second level would also be free of danger? According to Song Chi's opinion, he naturally wanted to enhance the level of the dark matter energy shield generator as much as possible before heading to the ruins. But no matter how eagerly Song Chi desired to bid, he was destined to remain silent. The most important thing at the moment was to secure that upcoming blue quality purifier component. Compared to the subsequent exploration of the ruins, the importance of the Zhution ruins market far outweighed it. The component was finally secured by a first-rank torch ship captain, leaving the other bidders sighing in disappointment. No one knows exactly what conditions allowed this person to trade for that blue engine. The second auction item, the magnetic field layer, white energy shield, starting at 300 strands of 0 rank floating land origin with each bid not to be less than 10 strands of 0 rank floating land origin. Bidding starts now. The first blue quality Aurora thermal engine immediately elevated the auction to a climax, but the subsequent items were much more mundane. Of course, there were still a few small gems interspersed throughout to maintain the auction's excitement. This common auction tactic was no secret to anyone present, but the atmosphere in the room was indeed quite pleasant. After the first Aurora thermal engine, no other items had caught Song Chi's interest until the arrival of a certain item. Item 43, 200 tons of mercury crystal, starting at 1,900 strands of 0 rank floating land origin, with each bid not to be less than 20 strands of 0 rank floating land origin. Upon hearing the words mercury crystal, Song Chi's eyes finally sparkled with interest as he quickly picked up the bidding device beside him. Mercury crystals are a warship enhancement resource at the mid-stage level, typically costing around 10 strands of 0 rank floating land origin per ton on the market. The reason for Song Chi's interest was that every enhancement of the dark matter energy shield generator required this resource, and he currently had nearly 100 tons of mercury crystal in stock. But each enhancement of his level 15 dark matter energy shield generator would consume dozens of tons, and 100 tons was nowhere near enough. 1980 strands of 0 rank floating land origin. No sooner had Song Chi entered his bid on the bidding device than the voice of John Tross from the auction stage below rang out. Bidder number 235 has bid 1,980 strands. Is there anyone else who wishes to bid higher? Several minutes later, after several rounds of bidding, Song Chi managed to secure the 200 tons of mercury crystal with a final bid of 2060 strands of 0 rank floating land origin. However, the 200 tons of mercury crystal wouldn't be handed to him immediately, they would only be delivered after the transaction was completed and he had paid the corresponding floating land origin as per his bid. Afterwards, Song Chi waited for quite some time. Just when he began to wonder if Rock Tross was just stringing him along, that long-anticipated blue purifying component was finally placed on the auction stage. A blue quality special component, abnormal status purifier, with the following attributes. Abnormal status purifier LV0. Quality blue. Consumption 5/S spectral energy points. Effect purification aura. Upon installation, the component will automatically generate a purification aura capable of purifying various negative states. Up rank requirement 3 strands of floating land origin, 0 rank, 300 spectral energy points. As per the request of the consignor, this component is only available for trade via barter and does not support floating land origin transactions. With the fall of John Trosser's voice, like the first Blue Engine, it quickly sparked a bidding war among many torch ship captains. Song Chi also picked up the bidding device once again, but this time he wasn't in a rush to bid. Instead, he was considering how many void crystals he should offer and whether he should include first-rank void crystals as well. Since there was a restriction to trade by barter, the only things Song Chi had available to exchange were these void crystals. Chapter 69, Ancestral Blood. I've heard that those who binge read are super handsome. Chapter 69, Ancestral Blood. I've heard that those who binge read are super handsome. The hesitation stemmed from Song Chi's thoughts on the incident at the Tross Mechanical House a few days ago. After he left the shop that day, he noticed nearly 10 figures shadowing him. Regardless of any claims to the contrary, he simply couldn't believe it was unrelated to the Tross Mechanical House. Granted, the Tross Mechanical House had a reasonable interest in identifying him and tracking his whereabouts given the scarce resources like void crystals, but Song Chi couldn't help but take extra precautions, especially considering that the auctioneer below on the stage was the patriarch of the Tross family himself, prompting Song Chi to be wary. After much deliberation, Song Chi ultimately decided to use the void crystal. After all, among his possessions, the void crystal was the only item substantial enough to present. Not rushing to place his bid, Song Chi stood up and swiftly left the Tianhe auction house under the watchful eyes of the various onlookers. Several seconds later, a figure clad in a cloak and long robe returned along the same route and sat down in the seat Song Chi had been in before, also picking up the bid device next to the seat. 800 rank void crystals. The puppet under the cloak tapped the bid device several times, and Song Chi successfully submitted his bid. Indeed, it was not Song Chi himself at the auction, but a fire peony soldier figurine controlled via a brainwave remote control system. Uncertain of the Tross family's urgent need for the void crystal and to guard against any potential outburst from John Tross, the second-rank torch ship captain conducting the auction, Song Chi had taken these precautions. However, what he didn't realize, or perhaps John Tross was simply that adept at concealing his motives, was that at the moment Song Chi submitted his bid, a subtle change flickered across John Tross's unperturbed expression, a fleeting sign expertly masked, yet his gaze stealthily scanned the crowd with a sweeping glance inadvertently passing over seat number 235 where Song Chi was located. Song Chi had absolutely no inkling of this. Despite his vigilance, the difference in the level of existence between him and John Tross was too vast, and he couldn't detect the discreet glance sent his way, not with the enhanced perception granted by his level 7 guidance technique. Even though he was diligently practicing with the mythical mech imprint, he had only been at it for 2 months. After a brief wait, a voice came through the bid device, a response from the commissioner. Song Chi was somewhat elated, regardless of whether the offer was accepted or not. The commissioner's response indicated that Song Chi's void crystals were seen as valuable. 800 rank void crystals are not enough. You need to offer a higher rank. Seeing the message on the bid device, Song Chi pondered for a while before sending another bid. Then how about 500 rank plus 100 first rank void crystals? The response came quickly this time, 600 rank plus 100 first rank, that's the final offer. Take it or leave it. Song Chi did the math in his head. According to the normal market price, 600 rank plus 100 first rank void crystals were equivalent to 1,600 strands of first rank floating land origin, or 16,000 strands of 0 rank floating land origin. Of course, the actual value was likely a bit higher, but not by much, and this price was roughly equal to that of a blue quality component. And so, Song Chi ultimately agreed to the deal. Once both parties had agreed, John Tross, the auctioneer below, quickly announced the result. The abnormal status purifier with blue quality was officially won by Song Chi. Finally, Song Chi could relax completely. He just needed to wait for the auction to end, return to Jution Ruins Market to install the abnormal status purifier, and with its blue level quality, purifying the mark left by the first rank void demon should be straightforward. But before that, there was one thing he had to take care of. He needed to change the engine, even if it was just a basic white one. The colorless quality spectral engine had too many restrictions, completely blocking any further enhancements for the Songqi. Regrettably, even after the final highlight item of the auction was revealed, no other engine components emerged, leaving Songqi without an opportunity to bid. Before he could feel too disappointed, his attention was wholly captured by the highlight item now presented on the auction stage. Not just him, all the hundreds of torch ship captains in the auction house felt the same. In that moment, everyone understood why the auction had attracted 10 second-rank torch ship captains. Even though John Tross had yet to disclose the details about the final auction item, the dazzling purple light emanating from within the wooden box declared its importance to everyone present. The highlight item was, unmistakably, the purple quality shipborne component. And it was certain that to draw the interest of so many second-rank torch ship captains, the attributes of this unknown purple component had to be quite exceptional, and certainly not one of those mediocre purple components from the White Tower local area network marketplace. Curious, all the torch ship captains watched as John Tross did not delay and revealed the attributes of the purple component right away. Strange object, primogenitor blood. Quality, purple. Evolvable, 1 Red Cross medical pod, 2 blood light protective layer, 3 Scarlet blood clan genetic modification pod incomplete. Remarks, a drop of primogenitor vampire's blood lost thousands of years ago, which has evolved over the long years into a purple relic with an extremely wide range of effects. Sir the Novelayer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. All the captains present were somewhat surprised to see a drop of fresh blood shimmering with a purple glow before their eyes, which had not yet been converted into a shipborne component and still retained its form as a strange object. After examining the attributes of this strange object, the torch ship captains realized that the relic known as Ancestor's Blood could evolve into as many as 3 different shipborne components. Although once the evolutionary direction was confirmed, it could no longer be changed at will unless the enhancement level was completely reset. There was no denying that this strange object offered a great deal of flexibility. Songqi even guessed that all 10 second-rank torch ship captains attending the auction might find a use for this drop of Ancestor's Blood. John, your auction house must have tested it already. Please list the attribute diagrams for the 3 components it can be converted into, someone commanded. At that moment, the room fell eerily silent, and a deep male voice emanated from one of the upper-level private rooms. On the auction stage, John Tross nodded gently. Red Cross Medical Cabin LV0. Quality, purple. Feature, increase healing effect by 30%. Consumption, 7/S effect, increases the healing effect on bleeding internal and external injuries by 260%. Up rank requirement, 7 threads of 0 rank floating land origin, 700 spectral energy points, 1 drop of 0 rank living creature essential blood. Bloodlight protective layer LV0. Quality, purple. Feature, after damage, shield value recovers 10 points per second. Consumption is 7/S spectral energy points. Defense is 17. Shield value 170/170. Charge 30s, post-overload buffer 1 hour. Up rank requirement 7 threads of 0 rank floating land origin, 700 spectral energy points, 1 ton of blood source crystal. Scarlet blood clan genetic modification cabin defect LV0. Quality, purple. Feature, increases genetic modification success rate by 1%. Consumption is 7/S spectral energy points. Effect, modifies living creatures with the Scarlet blood clan's genetic material with a success rate of 1%. Modification time, 1 hour, buffer is 720 hours. Up rank requirement, 7 threads of 0 rank floating land origin, 700 spectral energy points, 1 drop of 0 rank Scarlet vampire essential blood. After reviewing the 3 attribute panels, more than 90% of the captains immediately discounted the third component. The reason for this was the terrifyingly low success rate of the Scarlet blood clan modification cabin due to its defective state. Although the success rate could be increased through strengthening and upgrading, the catch was that, apart from the floating land origin and spectral energy points, it also required a specific type of Scarlet vampire essential blood for enhancement. There were not a few vampires bred within the Torch human civilization. As a species capable of bestowing longevity, this alien race, after successfully converting other living beings, could grant their converts extremely long lifespans, which made them creatures that many of the dying torch ship captains often sought out. However, the difficulty of extending one's life through conversion was fairly high. The higher the rank of the torch ship captain, the lower the probability of a successful conversion. Even if the conversion was successful, the chance of the vampire taking control and reversing the roles was equally frightening. Chapter 70, Intercept, please follow. Chapter 70, Intercept, please follow. Yet, despite such extreme strictness, danger, and the torch human civilization's strict prohibition, such occurrences were still commonplace. There was no helping it, for those torch ship captains who had once possessed supreme power and strength, embracing the vampire variant was the last straw they could clutch at after exhausting all means to prolong their own lives, a final attempt they had to make, no matter what. However, although there were quite a few vampires within the stronghold of the torch human civilization, they were not the scarlet vampires necessary for the genetic modification chamber. Scarlet vampires were a mutant variant within the vampire population, far less common than ordinary vampires, and as of now, their presence had not been reported within the stronghold of the torch human civilization. In other words, the path to enhancement for this Scarlet Blood Clan genetic modification chamber was severed, which was why all torch ship captains dismissed this component at first sight. But thinking about it, if it was so easy to enhance, the success rate of genetic modification would inevitably see a substantial increase. If it could be elevated above 10%, it would certainly be far more reliable than the initial embrace of vampirism, and in that case, this component would become a veritable cash cow. However, if it truly were possible to reach such a level, then why would Bahamol put it up for auction at all? At least John Tross would never allow it. As for the other two items besides the Scarlet Blood Clan genetic modification chamber, they were quite satisfactory. Whether it was the medical cabin, a special component, or the bloodlight protective layer, a type of energy shield, both were highly favored by torch ship captains. See the novelayer.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. After a burst of clamor, the auction for the purple relic officially began. However, those bidding were primarily the big shots in the 10 private boxes above, opening with offers of second rank or third rank floating land origin, or other on-board components of the same quality. Song-Chi and other zero-rank or first-rank torch ship captains didn't stand a chance to bid. Following a fierce competition, the Ancestral Blood was eventually taken by a second-rank torch ship captain for a purple main cannon of the same quality and an additional 100 strands of second-rank floating land origin. With that, the trade conference officially ended. Song-Chi quickly controlled the Fire Peony soldier figurine to hurry to the backstage of the auction venue. After paying 600 zero-rank void crystals plus 100 first-rank void crystals plus 2060 strands of zero-rank floating land origin, he successfully obtained 200 tons of mercury crystals plus abnormal status purifier. Upon exiting the Tianha auction venue, Song-Chi had originally intended to browse through various shops to see if he could find a white or higher quality engine component. However, midway, he sensed some discreet surveillance. Upon discovering this, Song-Chi immediately tensed up, his mind racing to the Tross family. Seeing this, he naturally preferred not to linger any longer in Baiha Mall. Baiha Mall, first floor. Song-Chi moved swiftly towards the mall's main entrance, with more than 5 pursuers, detectable by him, trailing behind. Once certain he was being followed, Song-Chi carefully scanned his surroundings out of the corner of his eye, seeking the best opportunity to enter Jution Ruins Market. To vanish into thin air under the public gaze was too astonishing. Such disclosure would inevitably catch the attention of many. Therefore, unless absolutely necessary, he was reluctant to do so. At the entrance of the mall, several diligent security guards were patrolling. Seizing the opportunity, Song-Chi approached them directly. At his succinct explanation, the security guards looked seriously towards the crowd behind him. This sudden development caused the Tross family guards, who were blending in with the crowd, to instinctively slow down. Although the Tross family was one of the 3 major affiliated families in Baiha Mall, the mutual checks and balances between the 3 meant they dared not take overt action within the mall itself. Seizing this moment, Song-chi controlled the fire peony soldier figurine to dash out of the mall at high speed. The moment he left the mall, the Songcheong, already hovering a dozen or so meters height, quickly opened its hatch. The fire peony soldier figurine leaped powerfully, the might of its fast-rank physique propelling it upwards, enabling it to precisely jump onto the Songcheong. Wah wah wah. Within the Songcheong, a ready Song-chi immediately revved up the engines with all his might. After a loud roar, the Songcheong soared into the sky and vanished above Baiha City in the blink of an eye. Hundreds of miles outside Baiha City, the swiftly gliding Songcheong abruptly halted. A 100-meter-long colossal vessel was quietly suspended high in the sky, a kilometer away. Song-chi's pupils violently contracted. He had a premonition that this unknown Guardian-class spectral spaceship was there for him and, most likely, bore no good intentions. Just as he wondered when he had provoked such a high-level character, Songcheong received a communication request. After a moment's hesitation, he accepted the communication. Soon his pupils constricted once again. John Tross. Since he had pretty much confirmed that the other party bore ill intentions, Song-chi had no intention of maintaining superficial courtesies and directly called out his name. Meanwhile, at the bottom of his heart, he was quickly thinking about how to extricate himself from this situation. As for the purpose of the other's visit, he knew full well it was nothing other than the void crystal. Other than that, he had nothing on him that would be worth the other's covetous gaze. Forget the dark matter energy shield generator or the brainwave remote control system. He had never revealed these two components from start to finish. As for the mercury crystal and the abnormal status purifier, if the other party had wanted them, he would never have been able to successfully get them at the previous auction. Do you need the void crystal? On the projection screen, the elder raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise flashing across his face. Clever, but not quite there, kid. In addition to all the void crystals on you, tell this old man about the origin of these void crystals, then you can live on your own. Song-chi's mouth twitched, and even with the cover of the white mask, John Tross still caught the sneer that flashed in Song-chi's eyes. His expression immediately darkened, as a coldness emerged on his face. But before he could speak, Song-chi went on the offensive. Showing your true colors now, then you still think you're going to let me live alive. If you're going to act, at least make it convincing. As the saying goes, an old man who does not die is a thief. This doesn't seem to apply to you at all. It seems like you have lived these 280 years as a dog. As soon as these words were out, John Tross no longer hid the murderous intent in his eyes. Originally, he had planned to get the void crystals, learn their origin and then leave the young man in front of him a whole corpse, but now he had changed his mind. He wanted to use the most cruel tortures to torment Song-chi, to make the young man in front of him beg for life without hope, beg for death without release. You little brat, your mouth is quite tough. Very soon, I'll let you experience the most cruel torment methods of this era, and then. Before he could finish his threatening words, the sudden movement from Song-chi made John Tross instinctively frown. Song-chi did not choose to run but instead turned the airship straight down, charging toward the continuous mountain ranges below. Just when he thought Song-chi had panicked and lost his composure, right before Songcheong was about to crash into a mountain below, Song-chi unexpectedly retracted the airship back into the ancestral torch, letting himself plummet rapidly towards the ground. Chapter 71, Training, Brake Limit 2 in 1. Chapter 71, Training, Brake Limit 2 in 1. Glancing up at the sky above, the 100-meter-long spectral warship swiftly flew close by, its terrifying speed far beyond the reach of a spectral airship. That was the reason why John Tross was so fearless and unabashedly revealed his true self in front of Song-chi, for from the moment he successfully barricaded the latter, Song-chi was as good as dead in his eyes. But what he didn't know was that as soon as Song-chi's figure submerged into the dense forest of the mountain below, he activated the Star Sea Ruin Market rank and returned to the Jution Ruins Market, already no longer within these mountains. Half an hour later. This is impossible. Could that kid really just vanish into thin air? John Tross's face darkened to the extreme. In the past half hour, not to mention digging 3 feet into the ground with the help of the special detection equipment components aboard his flagship, he had thoroughly scanned every inch of the mountain range down to 1,000 feet below, yet he never once caught sight of Song-Chi. After plummeting into the thick forest of the mountainside, it was as if Song-Chi had really disappeared out of thin air. Could it be a warp device? No, that's not right, the kid retracted his spectral airship, or was it some kind of special shipborne component for individual instant transportation? Song-Chi naturally had no knowledge of John Trosser's puzzles, but what he could be sure of was that the other party was bound to be frustrated. Within the Jution Ruins Market, Song-Chi's rapidly falling figure was caught by the power of loss in the Ruins Market secret realm, and he finally landed steadily. John Tross, the Tross family, Walking towards the special configuration slots area in the market, Song-Chi muttered softly to himself. He would naturally not let today's incident slide so easily. From the beginning to the end, the other party never intended to let him go. If it hadn't been for the Jution Ruins Market, if the market hadn't just evolved the new feature of Special Anchor Point, he would likely have fallen into enemy hands this time. Otherwise, even if he could enter the Ruins Market, there was no guarantee that John Tross wouldn't monitor the area of the market he entered at any moment. Feeling fortunate while also sighing, he had obviously underestimated the value of the Void Crystal. The willingness of a second-rank torch ship captain at his peak to act in person was evidence enough of the rarity of the Void Crystal. See thnelfa.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. However, the lesson was learned. If he encountered a similar situation in the future, he would never make a move so easily again, regardless of whether he concealed his identity or not. Perhaps entrusting it to his family or asking his old man for help was the right choice, even if it meant clearly signaling to his parents that he had a secret. It was better than losing his life. Having realized this, Song-Chi made a point to remember the grudge against the Tross family deeply in his mind. Of course, he might bear a grudge, but Song-Chi had no intention of pursuing revenge hastily. He was still too weak right now. The Tross family had significant influence. Although their legacy was only a bit over 200 years old, they had already become one of the top forces in Baiha City. Within the family, just the second-rank torch ship captains that were known publicly numbered 3, far beyond what someone who had just entered the first rank could provoke. However, for Song-Chi, who now possessed the Jution Ruins Market, the last thing he feared was a war of attrition, because his resource acquisition speed was far beyond that of ordinary people, and the rate of promotion for his warships under his command was likewise. Without further ado, he walked to the Ruins Market special configuration area and installed the abnormal status purifier component he held. Subsequently, the circle of colorless, soft light quickly emerged from the purifier component and slowly enveloped the entire Ruins Market space. At the same time, Song-Chi turned his gaze to the Ruins Market attributes panel. As expected, with the activation of the abnormal status purifier, the negative status category on the Ruins Market attributes panel had indeed quietly disappeared. With this, Song-Chi finally relaxed completely, as the demon mark had been making him feel uneasy for the past few days. He always felt like the moment he left the Ruins Market, the void demons would immediately track him down, preventing him from daring to stay outside for long. Even his participation in the Tianhe auction felt like walking on a tightrope. Now that he had completely eliminated the demon mark, he could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Having dealt with the demon mark and not in a rush to leave, he looked contemplatively at the abnormal status purifier in the special configuration slot. He pondered whether to keep the abnormal status purifier within the Ruins Market or to install it on Songqiong. After a brief consideration and weighing the pros and cons, he took the abnormal status purifier out of the configuration slot, eventually deciding that installing it on Songqiong was the better option. According to him, the Ruins Market being targeted by a demon mark was purely accidental. If it had not been for the intense light emitted by the market's advancement, it would not have attracted the void demon. In the future, all he needed to do was to acquire a special configuration that could conceal the glow before the next advancement of the Ruins Market. To easily resolve this issue, there was no need to keep the blue component that was the abnormal status purifier permanently equipped within the Ruins Market. To the contrary, Songqiong was destined for frequent exploration in the alien star. domain, inevitably dealing with all sorts of alien race civilizations. Conflicts in this regard were unavoidable, and the blue purifier component capable of cleansing various negative statuses such as slowing, binding, and corrosion of the ship's body would undoubtedly prove to be very useful. Therefore, it was clear that the cost-effectiveness of equipping this component was much higher on Songqiong. Chapter 72-71 Training Break Limit 2-in-1_2 Chapter 72 Chapter 71 Training Break Limit 2-in-1_2 In the center of Zhongyuan City, Song-Chi quickly changed his identity and swiftly sold the remaining 420 rank void crystals and 41st rank void crystals in his possession at the torch market, exchanging them for 420 strands of first rank floating land origin and 40 strands of second rank floating land origin. He then used the last of his over 3,000 strands of zero-rank floating land origin to buy an ordinary white shipborne engine, and left the market as quickly as possible. At Yution Ruins Market, Song-Chi took stock of his remaining funds. After purchasing the mercury crystals and the white-quality engine, 95% of his zero-rank floating land origin had been spent, leaving him with less than 300 strands. As for first-rank floating land origin, he had quite a bit left, a total of 890 strands, and 40 strands of second-rank floating land origin. This substantial amount of capital was more than enough for another round of enhancements to the Songqiong. Determined, Song-Chi wasted no time and immediately began the enhancement of various components of the Songqiong. He was soon to explore the Bulyo civilization ruins, so naturally, he would not skimp on resources at hand. Only with a higher enhancement level and stronger attributes of the Songqiong would the exploration of the ruins be safer. The first thing he enhanced was the white shipborne engine he had just purchased. Since it was already a requirement for the subsequent enhancement of the dark matter energy shield generator component, Song-Chi did not hesitate and directly enhanced the Assaulter engine to LV20. Assaulter engine LV20. Quality white. Consumption 15/S spectral energy points. Energy supplied 240/S spectral energy points. Post-overload buffer 20 minutes. Spectral pool 14,000 points, can store 14,000 spectral energy points. Up-rank requirement 17 strands of floating land origin, second rank, 10 life cores, second rank. After enhancing the Assaulter engine to second rank, Song-Chi's gaze shifted, and he turned his attention to the dark matter energy shield generator component, which he had been coveting for a long time. The LV-15 dark matter energy shield generator, which required tens of thousands of spectral energy points for each subsequent enhancement, was finally within reach. In the end, he spent another 340 strands of first-rank floating land origin and 210 tons of mercury crystal to raise it to LV-19. Dark Matter Energy Shield Generator LV-19. Quality orange. Feature shield value is increased by an additional 90%. Feature 2 shield defense value is doubled. Consumption 80/S spectral energy points. Defense 1536. Shield value 29184/29184. Charge 20s post overload buffer 35 minutes. Up-rank requirement 150 strands of floating land origin, first rank 15,000 spectral energy points, mercury crystals 80 tons. Regrettably, it wasn't possible to elevate it to second rank in one go. The 20% bonus from the base component slot after reaching first rank only increased the energy supply feature of the engine component. The spectral pool did not receive any extra bonus, resulting in a shortage of spectral energy points again. Of course, it wasn't just the spectral pools that was the problem. If it was just this issue, he still had a few dozen strands of second-rank floating land origin left in hand, which would be enough to further enhance the Assaulter engine by 2 levels. By then, reaching a spectral pool of 15,000 points with the LV-22 Assaulter engine should not be difficult. The real key issue was that he didn't have enough mercury crystals left to support further enhancement of the dark matter energy shield generator. Although mercury crystals were not considered a top-tier warship enhancement resource, acquiring over 50 tons in a short time was no easy task, so Song-Chi had to give up on further enhancements for the time being. However, even so, the dark matter energy shield generator component enhanced to LV19 resulted in a shield value approaching 30,000 points, a truly terrifying figure. After enhancing to this point, Song-Chi still had 343 strands of first-rank floating land origin and 40 strands of second-rank floating land origin left. He thought for a moment and then spent another 144 strands of first-rank floating land origin to enhance the particle beam cannon from LV16 to LV19. Particle beam main cannon LV19. Quality blue. Consumption 60/short spectral energy points. Feature main cannon might increase by 19%. Might 500 by 120%. Charge 3s, buffer 5s. Upgrade requirement 80 strands of first-rank floating land origin, 9,000 spectral energy points. At this point, Song-Chi had only 199 strands of first-rank floating land origin plus 40 strands of second-rank floating land origin left in his possession. Although this was still roughly equivalent to 6,000 strands of zero-rank floating land origin, the bulk lay in the 40 strands of second-rank floating land origin, which Song-Chi would not use lightly. Search *the overfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The higher the rank of the floating land origin, the more precious it becomes. No torch ship captain would easily use the high-rank floating land origin they had unless there were components that were extremely compatible with their flagship and of high quality. Song-Chi stored the remaining resources on the Tsangcheong just as he did before exploring the alien star domain, keeping them for emergency use when in peril. Additionally, because he had almost run out of zero-rank floating land origin, the two special components he had acquired, the brainwave remote control system and the abnormal status purifier, had not been enhanced and remained at LV0. Thinking of this, Song-Chi subconsciously opened Tsangcheong's attribute panel. Name: Tsangcheong. Model: Torch Spectral Airship. Level: LV10. Basic components: white torch warship body LV10, particle beam cannon LV19, spectral cannon LV10, gold rock ship armor LV10, assaulter engine LV20, dark matter energy shield generator LV19, patrol radar LV10, spectral cultivation room LV088. Additional components: fire peony soldier effigy tree LV15, brainwave remote control system LV0, abnormal status purifier LV0, 3/10. Spectral energy pool of 14,000/14,000. Supplies: 40 strands of second-rank floating land origin, 140 strands of first-rank floating land origin, 24 tons of mercury crystal, primary nutrient elixir, clear water. Jution Ruins Market, all attributes cultivation room. Instead of his usual cultivation of the guidance technique or visualization of the mythical mech imprint, Song-Chi was sitting cross-legged in the middle of the cultivation room, his gaze firmly fixed forward, constantly sweeping back and forth without stopping. Seemingly because he had maintained this for quite some time, sweat beads covered his forehead, and undeniable fatigue filled his eyes, showing that his spiritual consumption must have reached its limit. In front of him, 3 holographic screens floated side by side, each displaying entirely different scenes. Song-Chi's task was to memorize the contents of all 3 without missing a detail. Watching 3 different sets of images at the same time and memorizing everything is usually very difficult to achieve. It necessitates threefold mind utilization to truly manage it. Song-Chi was using this method to train or, rather, force himself to seek the feeling he previously experienced while in a limit-breaking state. Indeed, what he was doing was specific training for the limit-breaking state. Having entered this state twice before, he never doubted that someday he would fully master this unique skill. However, the uncertainty of the timing was hard for him to accept. Thus, he planned to use this simple but effective method to see if he could master that break limit skill ahead of time. Particularly after his battle with the Void Demon, Song-Chi became acutely aware of his current shortcomings. With more components being added to Tsangcheong, dual tasking was no longer sufficient to bring out all of its combat power. That's why he was so eager to control the break limit ability as soon as possible. Only with this skill could he unleash all of Tsangcheong's combat power through threefold mind utilization in emergency situations. Can't do it anymore, I need to rest and come back at it. Song-Chi, sensing a hint of breakthrough, appeared somewhat delighted. Although he wished to completely control the limit-breaking state all at once, he also understood that this was unlikely. From the time he cleared that demon mark in the ruin market until now, this targeted training had been going on for nearly half a month. If the limit-breaking state was so easy to control, it wouldn't have dragged on for so long. With a shift in thought, he disappeared from the market. After freshening up and returning to the bedroom, Song-chi had a good night's sleep. The next day, once his spirit was fully restored, the training resumed. 5 days later, with less than 3 days until the action he scheduled with Shunqing, Song-chi was still continuing his training. However, just as his eyes were rapidly scanning the 3 holographic screens in front of him, a profound feeling surged up within him, followed by a sudden sense of lucidity in his mind. What had been a struggle to keep up with the images on the screens now seemed effortless. It was as though there were a separate pair of eyes for each screen, meticulously recording every bit of the images playing on the screens. Threefold mind utilization, limit-breaking state, life finally end. Chapter 73, Shelf Speech. Chapter 73, Shelf Speech. The book has been out for over a month, and we finally reached the step of going live, which will happen tomorrow at noon. I'm not new to this, having published a few books before, and I feel really guilty towards those readers who have continuously supported me. I didn't intend to mention it in my previous works because I was too ashamed, but my editor insisted we could try for the 3 Rivers competition, so after much thought, I finally decided to thicken my skin and ask for your help. Many of you are worried that this book will end up on hiatus as well. To address this concern, I want to say that the performance of this book is still decent, with the current collection standing at about 13,000. As long as the initial subscriptions are normal, there is a high chance of being featured as a premium book later on. Plus, I will also be starting a readers group soon, so everyone can subscribe with confidence. Getting back to the point, before the book goes live, I first want to thank all the readers who have supported me since the release of this book and those who came over from my previous works. It is precisely because of your trust and support that this book has come this far, and I am truly grateful. Next, I would like to thank my responsible editor, Kenan, who is a super great editor. He gave me a lot of valuable suggestions during the internal review and is always responsive to any questions. Any readers who intend to write would definitely benefit from having him. Now, let's talk about the subsequent update and bonus chapter schedule. Starting at noon tomorrow, the baseline will be 4 chapters, 4K per chapter, with a guarantee of 2 chapters daily, 8K words, thereafter. Additionally, if we hit a target of 700 initial subscriptions for the 13,000 collections, for every 50 subscriptions above 700, I will add an extra 2,000 words. A reward of 10,000 points will get an additional 2,000 words. The leader will get an additional 20,000 words. Silver. I quickly crossed that out as I just woke up. As for adding extra chapters based on monthly tickets and average subscriptions, I will decide on that later depending on the situation. Finally, I want to thank again all the readers for their rewards, votes, and continued reading. Below is the list of rewards since the book's release. Fengha 100 points. Mr. Gue 100 points. Never Lose Out 800 points. Akandi. House 100 points. Aftermath Lang Jing 500 points. Reader 201907132024222879 100 points. Shao Shachu Let's Not Count Myself. Never Asking for Much 300 points. Snow Shadow 557 Q Reading 1666 points. ZJSYCT 1000 points. TYY Maple Leaf 100 points. Muran Yu 300 points. Blank Request Love 100 points. SEA the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Reader 16091216393917 5000 points. Thank you to all the readers for your rewards. Alright, that's all for now. Tomorrow at noon, let's not miss it. Chapter 74, 72, Departure Remains of Civilization, Seeking Fast Subscription. Chapter 74, Chapter 72, Departure Remains of Civilization, Seeking Fast Subscription. Surprised and overjoyed, Song-chi quickly came to his senses and pushed aside all other thoughts to carefully scrutinize and experience the state his body was in at that moment. Prior to this, his two break limit experiences had occurred under extremely dangerous circumstances when he had no chance to truly experience and comprehend the state. Now, however, the situation was different. There was nobody or nothing to disturb him, allowing him to safely ponder. He did not know how much time had passed when Song-chi once again opened his eyes. Though deep fatigue filled his eyes, it could not conceal the persistent joy that lingered. He had already exited the limit-breaking state, but his intuition told him that he had completely mastered this unique skill. From now on, whenever he wished, he could re-enter the limit-breaking state at will, rather than relying purely on luck as before. Of course, that was not possible at the moment. The last break limit had just ended, and his spirit was utterly exhausted. To forcibly activate the limit-breaking state again would bring an enormous burden, perhaps even harm, to his spirit. Naturally, Song-chi would not do such a foolish thing. In the interstellar era, time passes exceedingly fast. In the blink of an eye, several days had flown by. That day, Song-chi did not continue to immerse himself in the ruins market. Not only had his day-and-night absence already caused dissatisfaction from the respected elders Song Chao and Chen Lixia, but also because today was the day he had agreed to meet with Shen Qing. 2.5 months ago, they had made an arrangement to deploy their spectral shuttles into the alien star domain together, to jointly explore the Bulio civilization ruins. Son, if Mom remembers correctly, today should be the day your shuttle's buffer phase after deployment is completed, right? Let's eat, and then I'll take you to the outskirts of the city, Chen Lixia said, eyeing Song-chi who was browsing the news about the White Tower in the living room, pride and a hint of worry evident in her gaze. Without even realizing it, her son was about to carry out his fourth deployment into the alien star domain. For all torch ship captains, which deployment was a gamble, and the thought of her son soon wagering on another round of life made her worry as a mother. Ignoring his mother's words, Song-chi's gaze remained fixated on the quantum TV in front of him, which at that moment was broadcasting a piece of news. According to a person in charge at the Baiha City Baiha Mall, Mr. He who entrusted items for auction at the mall over 20 days ago has now been confirmed dead. The wreckage of his flagship, Ironclad, was found in a wasteland thousands of kilometers from Baiha City. The item Mr. He consigned for auction at the Baiha auction over 20 days ago was a blue special warship component called the Abnormal Status Purifier. The Torch Bureau in Baiha has now confirmed the incident was criminal, not an accident. Song-chi's eyes narrowed at this news. The person mentioned was the very owner from whom he had traded the Abnormal Status Purifier, and his inexplicable death immediately brought John Tross to Song-chi's mind. He was sure that this man's death must be related to John Tross. From Tross's previous actions, when he had intercepted Song-chi, it was evident that he was desperately in need of void crystals. Otherwise, he would not have personally attempted to blockade a mere first-rank torch warship captain like himself. Thus, after Song-chi had used the Jution ruins market to escape without a trace, if Tross wanted to obtain a large amount of void crystals in a short time, he would have no choice but to target the consignor who had traded a significant quantity of void crystals with Song-chi. John Tross. Song-chi's eyes trembled slightly, his heart turning cold. He could say that the torch ship captain with the surname, he, was his scapegoat. For a moment, Song-chi was filled with mixed emotions. It wasn't that he was burning with righteous indignation for the Hisanam torch ship captain. Although he did feel a trace of guilt, that was all. As someone who had a mental age of over 60 years, he was no saint. In this era of the vast starry sea, the death of a person has never been a big deal, not even for a torch warship captain. Let alone the entire torch human civilization, even just the Chengxing Principality on the frontier of torch civilization, with its territories that span several star domains and a diameter of thousands of light years. Amidst this vast expanse of the starry sea, covering thousands of light years, were there not hundreds of life-floating lands? The number of citizens born within them is counted in the hundreds of billions. With such a massive population, countless people die every day, and torch warship captains are no different. Song-chi was merely somewhat apprehensive. After all, it had always been him whom John Tross was targeting, and the his-named captain's fate was purely down to misfortune. Naturally, Song-chi would not pay it too much mind. Search *the novel fire.any *t website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Lost in thought, the familiar roar of his mother, the lioness from the east of the river, came from behind him. Song-chi, did you hear what I said? Not even a peep. Do you find your mom annoying? Coming back to his senses, Song-chi quickly interrupted his increasingly exaggerated mother. Miss Chen Lixia, I officially inform you that your son's warship has successfully advanced into a spectral airship. From now on, there's no need to go to the outer city long-range Starry Sea deployment pad any longer. At these words, silence fell upon the house, not just on Chen Lixia, but also Song Chao in the study walked over at once. Advancing from a spectral shuttle to a spectral airship after only 3 star domain explorations might not be extremely rare in the ever-dazzling Torch civilization, but it was certainly a remarkably quick pace. According to the official data released by the Torch human civilization, the time required for all successful spectral airship advancements varied from one Torch warship to another. Chapter 75-72, Departure as Civilization Ruins, The Seeking Fast Subscription, _2. Chapter 75 Chapter 72, Departure as Civilization Ruins, The Seeking Fast Subscription, _2. Among those who have successfully advanced after 5 to 9 explorations of the alien star domain, the proportion is 15%. Those who have successfully advanced after 10 to 20 explorations of the alien star domain account for 70%. And those who only advanced after 21 explorations of the alien star domain make up 10%. However, those who had successfully advanced in the first 4 explorations only account for about 5%. That is to say, if Song-chi were not lying, it means his advancement speed at 0 rank surpassed 95% of his peers among the Torch human civilization's Torch ship captains. Observing the serious expression on their son's face, Song Chao and Chen Lixia exchanged glances. Even though they were very much aware of their son's character, this was no small matter, so the couple still brought Song-chi to their community's exclusive Torch warship dock. It was not until they saw with their own eyes Song-chi summoning the nearly 20-meter-long Song-cheong that they were completely reassured. After returning home, although Song Chao and Chen Lixia did not say much, the fleeting smiles that they could not hide in the depths of their eyes said it all, as Song-chi had brought them far too many surprises recently. First, it was pearls that had been cultivated for hundreds of years, then the mermaid's tears that were handed over to Chen Lixia, and now it was a direct promotion to a spectral airship after just 3 explorations. All of this was not something a typical Torch ship captain could achieve, and it amply demonstrated their son's abilities. Of course, they also did not ask too many questions. In the afternoon, after lunch, Song-chi received a communication from Shunqing. Dad, Mom, I had made plans with Shunqing to explore together, but I'm heading out now, he said. Before he left, Song Chao and Chen Lixia reminded him, emphasizing that the more people who explore the alien star domain together, the higher the risk, and told him to be extra cautious. Of course, Song-chi was well aware of this, but this time was different. Shunqing had an alien star domain guide marker, meaning that their deployment was targeted rather than random, so the risk would not change, and furthermore, Shunqing had already explored the Buluo civilization ruins once before, so the danger should not be too great. In the starry sky directly above Zhongyuan City, Song-chi and Shunqing successfully met up. When Shunqing saw Song-chi's Song-cheong, a look of surprise flashed in his eyes, followed by an air of inevitability. Even though Song-chi had only awakened 3 months ago, he did, after all, have Song Chao, a second-rank Torch ship captain, as his father, so a bias in resources was inevitable. Moreover, Shunqing was somewhat prepared for this, otherwise, he would not have taken the initiative to invite Song-chi, who had just awakened more than 2 months ago, given that the combat power of a newly awakened spectral shuttle is very limited. In the communication projection screen, Song-chi caught the changes in Shunqing's expression and could roughly guess what he was thinking. However, he did not offer an explanation. On the contrary, he hoped everyone would think this way, attributing everything to his father. This was not only logical but also meant he did not have to worry about the exposure of the Zhution ruins market. It was the best of both worlds. After meeting up, the two set off toward the desolate starry space. The spectral airship's autonomous deployment was quite noisy, so they usually headed to a deserted area to initiate the deployment. However, before starting the deployment, there was a very important operation. Chongqing's Qingfeng rapidly emitted a streak of blue brilliance. This light strip was not a straight beam of light but a rope-like strip that could twist and knot itself. This light strip stretched out from Qingfeng and swiftly headed toward Songqi's Zhongqiong. After extending and winding for more than 10 seconds, it successfully connected the Qingfeng and Zhongqiong, two spectral airships together. See the novel, f.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This type of light strip is emitted by a special warship-mounted component called the warship interlock device, which can connect two or even multiple towed warships, allowing multiple ships initiating deployment to arrive in the same area. However, the price, as Song Chao and Chen Lixia had mentioned, is that the danger of exploring the alien star domain in this joint manner is very high, although with Chongqing star domain guide marker, this would not be an issue this time. About the Zhongqiong, Song Qi asked Chongqing on the projection screen. Big Qing, how long is the cooldown time for your star domain guide marker component? If we still can't finish exploring this time, can we place a second marker? Chongqing quickly shook his head. My component is only of blue quality. It needs a buffer of 3 years after each activation, and this is after enhancing it to LV19. When I first got it, the buffer time was even longer, a full 5 years, he said. Hearing the buffering time of a full 3 years, Song Qi couldn't help but be astonished. Components like this one, capable of actively marking a certain star domain with an interstellar beacon for subsequent exploration, were extremely rare. He hadn't found any relevant information on the Torch network, which sparked his curiosity. And indeed, he found that while such components were handy, their cooldown times were unimaginably long. They could only be used once every 3 years, and, despite the beacon being able to last 6 months once set, it could only be activated once. Whenever it was, the beacon would disperse after use. That is to say, each beacon not only demanded a buffer time of 3 years but also allowed for the exploration of a star domain at most twice, which was essentially the difference between 24 and 48 hours. The restrictions were particularly severe. Thinking of this, Song Qi's gaze flickered uncertainly as he thought of the feature of the special anchor point in the Zhutian ruins market. He had previously contemplated this issue, as special anchor points seemed to serve similarly as interstellar beacons, albeit potentially enhanced versions. If he were to remove his special anchor point from his bedroom and reset it to the alien star domain he ended up in after a deployment, then even if he returned later, he could use the Zhutian ruins market as a midpoint and revisit that star domain via the special anchor point. With this thought, Song Qi could barely contain his excitement, for he had a feeling that his idea was feasible. Of course, it wasn't truly possible to travel back and forth at whim. After all, he could currently set only one anchor point, and if he activated the anchor point without any preparation, he would only be able to travel between the star domain of the anchor and the Zhutian ruins market, having lost the anchor point within the Torch human civilization's stronghold. As for the initial anchor point that came inherent with his body, it would automatically move to the alien star domain at the instant he activated the anchor set there and entered that domain himself. Unless he activated the anchor point and stayed within the ruins market without leaving, his presence wouldn't reach the other side, and he wouldn't be able to further explore or collect resources from that star domain, rendering the anchor point itself meaningless. In response to this problem, Song Qi had also considered a solution to utilize the auto-return feature of the spectral airship. After setting the anchor point, he would resist the urge to activate it immediately. Instead, he would enter the ruins market from the deployed star domain and then use it as a waypoint to activate the anchor point and head to the star domain where the anchor was. In this way, once the 24 hours were up, the spectral airship would naturally be able to return automatically to the star domain of the anchor, forming a perfect loop. However, the chance of success for this method was just very high. It wasn't guaranteed, and further personal experimentation was needed to see if it truly worked. Lost in thought, the faint sensation of weightlessness hit him, growing stronger as time passed. Feeling the familiar prelude to an alien domain deployment, Song Qi quickly refocused, concentrating entirely and putting aside all distractions. As the sense of weightlessness peaked, he was immediately followed by a spell of dizziness. When he had recovered, Song-Chi found that both the Tsang-Cheong and Ching-Fong had emerged above a yellow-brown expanse of the starry sea floating land. Woo! Outside the airship, yellow sand swirled, and a terrible sandstorm ravaged every region of the floating land at all times, with the mournful howling providing ample proof. Little Chi, quickly activate the energy shield. This floating land has long been eroded by yellow sand. The sandstorms here can easily damage the hull. Shun-Ching's voice rapidly came through the airship's short-range communication. Chapter 76, 73, A Sand Sea Storm, Special Veil, please subscribe. Chapter 76, Chapter 73, Sand Sea Storm, Special Veil, please subscribe. There was no need for Shun-Ching's reminder, as Song-Chi activated the energy shield faster than anyone else. However, the spectral airship's energy shield ultimately wasn't instantaneous. The 20-second charging time was something that couldn't be changed. It was during the dark matter energy shield generator's charging period that two sandstorms, each with a diameter of several tens of meters, bore down on the two spectral airships from both the left and the right. Given their speed of approach, it was clear that there was bound to be a collision with both airships before they could successfully activate their energy shields. Hoo. Outside the hull of the ship, the sharp and urgent wailing sound echoed continuously, and the Tsang-Cheong underfoot was shaking violently. Even though the two sandstorms hadn't fully closed in yet, the huge hurricanes they brought with them already had a significant impact on both spectral airships. The energy level of the hurricanes generated by these two sandstorms must be at the peak of the first rank. No sooner had he come to this conclusion than Shun-Ching's voice came through on the communication projection again. Little Chi, don't take this lightly. These are only the weakest kind of sandstorms. This starry sea floating land is riddled with countless storm eyes, and I once encountered a superstorm over a kilometer in diameter. Even from 10,000 meters away, the Ching-Fong nearly failed to escape its storm field. Remember, never get trapped in a sandstorm over 100 meters in diameter. A storm eye of that size is enough to tear apart our energy shields and armor layers. Song-Chi felt somewhat solemn. Before departing, Shun-Ching had also talked to him about the situation of this abandoned floating land, and he already knew about the terrifying natural disasters such as the sandstorms, but kilometer-wide storm eyes were a frightening thought. The mere tens of meters wide storms in front of them were already daunting enough. How much more terrifying would it be to encounter ones over 100 meters, let alone kilometer-scale sandstorms? The embedded lock light beams enwrapping the two spectral airships were urgently withdrawn, and the engines of both the Tsang-Cheong and Ching-Fong were engaged at full power almost simultaneously. With the thrust, it was easy for the two airships to break free from the gravitational pull of the two sandstorms since they were still in the periphery of the storms where the pull wasn't too strong. By the time Tsang-Cheong and Ching-Fong reached a relatively safe position, the energy shields of both ships were also fully activated. Unlike the deep black energy barrier that enveloped Tsang-Cheong, a white shield unfolded over the surface of Shun-Ching's Ching-Fong. With a cursory glance, Song-Chi had a rough guess. The energy shield equipped on the Ching-Fong was most likely a white quality component, which was quite a standard configuration for a spectral airship at the torch warship level. Song-Chi was not surprised. After all, counting the interstellar beacon and the torch warship's locking device, Shun-Ching's Ching-Fong had at least two blue quality components. This was exceedingly rare for a spectral airship that had advanced to the first rank in less than a year. On the other hand, Shun-Ching was quite astonished. It was one thing for Song-Chi to have ascended to the first rank after just 3 explorations of the alien star domain, but the energy shield unfolding on the surface of Tsang-Cheong appeared to be quite strong. He felt he had underestimated his lifelong friend. He could tell that the dark matter energy shield was something special, at least at the blue level. Little Chi, is this a blue quality energy shield? Hearing this inquiry, Song-Chi did not respond, neither confirming nor denying. In Shun-Ching's eyes, this was an implicit affirmation. For a moment, he felt somewhat sentimental, thinking that having a second rank further really made a difference. Although he also had the support of his elders, the extent of it was far less significant. However, he only felt sentimental for a brief moment and didn't take it too seriously. He was well aware that Sean Wenjie was ultimately his uncle, who supported him to a certain extent and had found a way to get him a position at the Torch Bureau under Jiang Yuan, which was already a great deal of consideration. After all, his father was just an ordinary man who hadn't awakened the seed of Torch, and Sean Wenjie hadn't looked down on him for that. He had been well cared for over the years, which was a great kindness in and of itself. With their thoughts in check, both of them controlled their spectral airships and started to move cautiously towards the location of the ruins. According to Shenqing, the area surrounding the ruins was a region of dense sandstorms, with storms over 100 meters in diameter common. Search the ovalfire.at website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. For that reason, he had not dared to set the beacon's drop point near there but had instead opted for the relatively safe location they were at now. Along the way, neither dared to let their airships accelerate too fast, otherwise they could inadvertently enter the gravitational fields of the 100-meter-wide sandstorms. If that happened, escaping would consume a lot of time, which would be much more costly than steadily proceeding forward and saving time. Inside the cockpit of Song Chi carefully piloted the ship forward, glancing occasionally with the corner of his eye at the indescribable floating land below. Although he had listened to his teachers describe various floating lands in past courses, this was his first time actually seeing one in person. Gazing upon the endless sand sea, the swirling sand and storms, it was hard for him to imagine how a piece of the starry sea floating land could have become like this. Given that the Bulio civilization's ruins were located on this floating land, it was highly indicative that the land hadn't always looked like this. Even if it were not a life-supporting floating land, it must at least have been a resource type one. Otherwise, the Bulio civilization would not have invested the effort to leave their mark here. Chapter 77, 73, A Desert Storm, Special Veil, please subscribe, _2. Chapter 77, Chapter 73, A Desert Storm, Special Veil, please subscribe, _2. But then again, if the floating land beneath us is, as he suspected, an ancient resource, or even life-bearing floating land, what could have turned it into the scarred wasteland it is now? A natural disaster. Song Chi thought it unlikely, as the natural disasters typical to floating lands did not possess such mighty power. As he was lost in speculation, Sean Qing's voice came through the communication projection. Little Chi, we're almost there. Look at that giant stone ahead. Hearing this, Song Chi instinctively directed his gaze forward, and then the corner of his mouth twitched. You call that a giant stone? It's taller than most mountain ranges, you know. Grumbling internally, Song Chi's gaze remained fixed on the massive, square stone that stood at the horizon. Indeed, it was 10,000 meters tall. Based on the distance, the massive square yellow rock at the end of his vision certainly wouldn't be shorter than 10,000 meters in height, which was obviously quite astonishing. Beyond astonishment, Song Chi was mostly puzzled. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't discern any trace of an ancient civilization on that enormous stone, other than its overly square shape. The semi-intelligent shipboard brain of the Tsongchong showed that this thing was 99% likely just an ordinary stone, albeit a super huge one. Seemingly guessing what Song Chi was thinking, Sean Qing laughed. Do you feel like that's just an ordinary rock? Seeing Song Chi nod without hesitation, Sean Qing explained. I thought the same when I first came here. But the reality is completely different from what you think. You'll find out soon. Seeing Sean Qing tease him with a cliffhanger, Song Chi didn't ask further, and the two airships continued their approach towards the giant stone. Suddenly, a terrifying sandstorm over 700 meters in diameter was unleashing its boundless energy a few thousand meters ahead. Seeing this, Song Chi and his companion immediately took a wide berth around it, as the energy fluctuations within the storm's core had reached third rank. Neither the Tsongchong nor the Qingfeng could survive if they got caught in its gravitational field. They would be torn to shreds in an instant, as the engines equipped on both airships were merely of white quality and completely incapable of escaping its daunting gravitational pull. As the two airships altered their course, the radar on Tsongchong detected a continuous dune beneath the sands below. At first glance, it looked like a sand dragon concealed under the sand and moving at high speed. Its terrifying 10-meter diameter put both Song Chi and Sean Qing in the vault of heaven above on high alert. Without a doubt, the fast-moving form beneath the sands was likely a remarkably large desert creature. Song-Chi instinctively directed a questioning look towards the projection screen, but before Shun-Ching could respond, the rapidly extending dune below suddenly stopped, and the next second, a horrific black shadow burst forth from the sand. This shadow was enormous in size, but its 10-meter diameter was not the main focus. What was truly shocking was its hundreds of meters in length. CTHNorthAir.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This creature resembled an earthworm from a previous era but was a supersized version, and at one end of its head it had a round mouth several meters in diameter, filled with densely packed, razor-sharp teeth. As it looked up and roared, Song-Chi and Shun-Ching above could clearly see the glittering, densely packed sharp teeth inside, terrifying to behold. Further detecting the energy emanation from its body, the creature's life force was incredibly at the second rank. If it were to collide with the Song-Cheong or Ching-Fong, the outcome would be at least 30% damage to the airship's structure, or even a total loss was not unexpected. In their urgency, even knowing that their airships were currently at a safe altitude, Song-Chi and his companion instinctively climbed higher just to avoid any unnecessary accidents. Looking at Song-Chi's inquiring gaze, Shun-Ching shrank his head and muttered, "I didn't encounter this thing last time." Song-Chi naturally did not say much. The fact that Shun-Ching had revealed this relic matter to him already amply demonstrated the other's trust in him. Given their relationship, it was natural not to harbor any grievances over such a matter, let alone that it was an unexpected event that Shun-Ching hadn't known about the existence of the artifact beforehand. Avoiding one sandstorm after another, the two ships continued forward, while the creature of unknown race that had been behind them followed for a while. Fortunately, it seemed to fear the storms as well, and after timing the position and timing of several storms, they finally shook off their pursuer. An hour later, the hurriedly chasing Song-Cheong and Ching-Fong finally reached the base of the colossal rock. It looked fine from a distance, but when they got close to the giant rock, Song-Chi couldn't help but marvel at its size. With a terrifying height of over 10,000 meters, the less than 20-meter Song-Cheong appeared as tiny as an ant in front of it. At this, Song-Chi had to marvel at the wonder of nature's creation. Of course, according to what Shun-Ching had said earlier, this object didn't seem to be natural but rather a creation of the Bulyo civilization. Just as he was about to ask about the situation of the giant rock, Shun-Ching spoke up first. "Try attacking the side of the rock with your shipborne main cannon or secondary cannon." Following Shun-Ching's suggestion, Song-Chi, puzzled, activated the spectral cannon, and then he instantaneously realized. The attack unleashed by the spectral cannon, upon colliding with the side of the rock, did not result in the expected explosion. It was as if the energy shell had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Seeing this, the three words involuntarily escaped Song-Chi's mouth. "Spatial veil." On the projected screen, Shun-Ching nodded gently with a smile. Spatial veil technology was not unfamiliar to any Toch ship captain who had received formal education. It was a very common low-level spatial technology among various Starry Sea civilizations. The shattered Starry Sea was vast and boundless, giving rise to countless civilizations, and most of the science-oriented civilizations that emerged from the floating land could control this technology. Why is it considered low-level spatial technology? Because while it is called spatial technology, in reality, it is about using spatial methods to block and isolate a region of space, creating a sealed space. However, such spaces cannot be reduced, enlarged, or moved. Crucially, setting up such a spatial veil also requires consuming a large amount of valuable materials, which is quite inefficient. Generally speaking, this technology is often used to conceal some special, still developing strange objects, or to hide bases, laboratories, and so forth. Its practicality isn't very high. With his mind working quickly, now that he knew it was spatial veil technology, it also meant that there was a completely sealed space inside the giant rock. Presumably, the relic Shun-Ching had mentioned before was located within this sealed space. Just go straight in. Song-Chi, however, did not agree with Shun-Ching's statement. Even though Shun-Ching had entered this sealed space before and had not encountered any dangers, that was nearly half a year ago, who could say for sure that it would be safe inside today? Opening the hatch of Song-Cheong, Song-Chi released a Hornet-class drone and activated the brainwave remote control system component, imprinting a brainwave beacon on the Hornet-class drone. Then, two completely different fields of view appeared before him, one his own, and the other the perspective of the Hornet-class drone. Shifting his attention to the Hornet-class drone, he began remotely controlling the drone as it flew towards the side of the gigantic rock. Pop! Soon, the rapidly speeding drone entered the spatial veil and completely disappeared from the outside world. At the same time, one of Song-Chi's fields of view completely changed, transforming from a sky filled with yellow sand into a silent space that spanned thousands of kilometers in both length and width. The space was vast, but aside from the endless darkness, there was nothing else. Clearly, Song-Chi's concerns were somewhat unnecessary, there were no other dangers behind the spatial veil. Chapter 78, 74, Sarcoma Space, subscribe please. Chapter 78, Chapter 74, Sarcoma Space, subscribe please. On board the Qingfeng, Shun-Qing watched the operation with a hint of amusement and couldn't help but chuckle at Song-Chi's caution. Of course, his amusement was just a light chuckle because he had no objections to caution itself. In fact, he quite admired Song-Chi's behavior deep down. Every year, countless torch ship captains die exploring the alien star domain. Life is precious, and no matter how cautious, it's never too much. Hearing the laughter coming from the projection screen while controlling the drone's return, Song-Chi replied, "I have a classmate who always took low-key as his personal motto. Guess what my life motto is? Caution." After pondering for a moment, Shun-Qing tentatively spoke this word, thinking that Song-Chi would firmly deny it. To his surprise, Song-Chi actually nodded seriously and even added a statement. "You could also call it prudence." Shun-Qing touched his forehead, somewhat speechless inside. Goddamn prudence, the precocious man he remembered wasn't like this. Song-Chi didn't care about Shun-Qing's reaction. It was just a casual comment, with no exaggeration. The day he activated the Star Sea Ruin market rank with spectral energy and successfully became the Ruins market lord, the word prudence was indeed engraved on the very first page of his life's dictionary, but there was nothing he could do if others didn't believe him. After retrieving the Hornet-class drones and ensuring there were no dangers within the spatial veil, the two of them maneuvered their airships to pass through the veil, one after the other. This time, Song-Chi's Song-Cheong was following behind, and the Qingfeng was leading the way in front. They were now in the enclosed space Shun-Qing referred to as the first layer of the ruins. According to Shun-Qing, he stumbled upon the spatial veil on the side of the monolith and discovered a crystal box sealing a blue oddity and several white oddities within this enclosed space. In the end, it took Shun-Qing immense effort and nearly 20 hours to shatter the crystal box with the Qingfeng's main cannon and obtain those strange objects. However, after the crystal box was shattered, it completely turned to dust along with its fragments, leaving nothing behind to see now. The enclosed space was massive, measuring thousands of kilometers in width and length, with nearly a kilometer in height, but it was nothing compared to the size of the two Tot warships. In less than 2 minutes, Song-Chi had successfully spotted the entrance to the second layer of the ruins that Shun-Qing mentioned. It was a spatial veil at the very top of this enclosed space, different from the outer veil. This one seemed to be reinforced, not allowing passage and filled with a powerful repelling force, preventing any object from approaching. Seeing this, Song-Chi finally understood why Shun-Qing said there was a second layer to the ruined space. Above this spatial veil, there obviously was another layer of space. The repulsion of this thing above is incredibly strong. Last time, I bombarded it with both the main and secondary cannons of the Qingfeng for more than 2 hours but still couldn't break through. Let's try together this time. If it's still in vain, then we are destined to have no luck with whatever is beyond these ruins. Shun-Qing stared at the square spatial veil above, which was over 100 meters in width and length, clenching his fists tightly with a hint of nervousness in his voice. The moment he and Song-Chi teleported above this floating land, the star path marker he left had already dissipated. This was their last opportunity to explore these ruins. If they failed upon returning, they would no longer be able to precisely target this star domain. Knowing time was pressing, and having already spent more than an hour on their journey, the two did not waste any more time. The main and secondary cannons of both airships fired at full power towards the spatial veil above. Boom, boom, boom. Beams of light and spectral energy shells collided with the repulsion force, followed by continuous explosions. It was fortunate that this space was completely sealed off, otherwise, Song-Chi really feared the noise might attract those terrifying giant earthworm-like creatures. In this dark, enclosed space, the sense of time was very vague. If it weren't for the special timing devices on their airships, Song-Chi and Seon-Ching would likely have no clue how long they had been repeating the attack. In the fourth hour of sustained fire coverage, the repelling force of the spatial veil finally changed, dimming significantly, and catching sight of this, the previously numb pair regained their sharpness in their eyes. By the eighth hour of continuous bombardment, the repulsive force on the spatial veil had dimmed to an extreme, seeming as if it would break at any moment. However, even by the 12th hour of bombardment, the repulsive force stayed stubbornly substantial, with no sign of shattering. In the 13th hour, just as Song-Chi and Seon-Ching were mindlessly continuing to press the fire button mechanically. Hum! A sudden clear, vibrating sound echoed within both airships, and looking up urgently, the next second the faces of both men lit up with great joy. That layer of repulsion surrounding the spatial veil above had become thoroughly dim without notice, allowing the attacks from the airships to pass through without being repelled by the spatial veil, creating ripples before plunging into the unknown space above. Overjoyed, Seon-Ching instinctively wanted to drive the Ching-Fong toward the spatial veil but was stopped by Song-Chi. Search the Nifire.8 website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Chapter 79-74 It's a comma space request for subscription _2. Chapter 79 Chapter 74 It's a comma space request for subscription _2. It was initially just an overly excited subconscious act, but after being stopped and reminded by Song-Chi, Seon-Ching quickly realized it and, together with Song-Chi, opened the airship's hatch to release a drone. In the process of exploring the alien star domain, at least 99% of torch warship captains would bring along 1 or 2 combat robots and reconnaissance drones. Even without a network, these two could only be controlled and mobilized within the magnetic field range of the torch warship itself, but they were still the standard configuration for most torch warship captains exploring the alien star domain. After all, even though the magnetic field range of the torch warship itself was extremely limited, in many cases, the combat robots and drones could still play a significant role. Take the current situation, for example. The two drones disappeared one after another into the spatial veil, apparently less than a second apart, but the expressions on the faces of Song-Chi and Seon-Ching below showed starkly different changes. After the drone controlled by Seon-Ching entered the spatial veil, the image on the control screen in his hand suddenly turned pitch black, completely losing connection with the Hornet-class drone. It was different for Song-Chi. After more than 10 hours of buffering, the brainwave remote control system had already completed the buffering process, and he had once again set a brainwave beacon on this drone. Therefore, even with the barrier of the spatial veil, he never lost sight from the perspective of the Hornet-class drone. Inside the Ching-Fang's cockpit, Seon-Ching's gaze shifted to the communication screen on one side, but before he could ask about the drone, he saw the expression of horror on Song-Chi's projected face on the screen, an expression that comes only after witnessing great terror. Based on his knowledge of Song-Chi since childhood, it had to be something unimaginable in the space above the spatial veil that could have caused such a loss of composure. Almost subconsciously, his hands moved quickly, controlling the Ching-Fong to veer and swiftly retreat backward. On the side, the Song-Cheong reacted even a fraction faster, and at the same time, Song-Chi's shout rang out from the communication screen. Retreat quickly. As for Song-Chi, after the Hornet-class drone passed through the spatial veil and reached another space above, he saw from the drone's perspective another space that was thousands of kilometers wide and long. Different from the first layer, at the very center of this second layer was a cubic crystal box about 10 meters wide, exuding dazzling white light that fully illuminated the entire second layer space. It was because of this bright white light that Song-Chi saw a sight he would never forget. All over the second layer space were things like lumps of flesh, about a meter in height and numbering in the thousands, not only sticky and gooey but also faintly pulsating as if they all had life. At the deepest part of the second layer space, Song-Chi also saw a giant lump of flesh tens of meters tall with even more pronounced pulsations. Song-Chi could even vaguely see through the fleshy wall the huge and bloated monster figure inside. Undoubtedly, all of these lumps of flesh were enveloped with unknown creatures in slumber. But that was not the most horrifying part. Just as Song-Chi was about to control the drone to quietly return, not wishing to disturb these dreadful lumps of flesh, he realized it was too late. The few rounds of cannon fire previously emitted from the Song-Cheong and Ching-Fong as they passed through the spatial veil had completely destroyed several lumps of flesh. At this moment, these lumps were violently shaking, and the monsters sleeping within were now awakened. As these few lumps continued to shake, all the lumps in the second layer space were being successively roused. Crack, crack, crack. When the first few lumps of flesh that were hit were completely torn apart, the creatures they were enveloping were fully revealed in the drone's field of view. Damn it, it's the insect race. This second layer is in hibernation with tens of thousands of the insect race, and there's even a queen insect. As the Song-Cheong and Ching-Fong pulled back hundreds of meters away, Song-Chi didn't wait for Shun-Ching to ask and directly roared. When Shun-Ching heard the word insect race, his reaction was almost entirely the same as Song-Chi's. A deep fear flashed through his eyes, followed by his face darkening completely. Search the novel F.A.8 website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The insect race, a species of the starry sea as infamous as the void demon, insect plague, and the disaster of the void, these two were so notorious that they ranked among the top 5 calamities throughout the entire shattered starry sea. At this moment, Song-Chi finally understood the full picture. He had been perplexed about one thing: what power could have caused a piece of the starry sea floating land to be so thoroughly devastated, to the point where it was almost entirely barren. It wasn't until now, with the emergence of these insect race members, that the answer almost perfectly clicked into place. Unlike the void demon's bloodlust and thirst for killing, the characteristic of the insect race was devouring anything with energy. No matter in which star domain these creatures appeared, the end result was always that the resources of the star domain would be consumed entirely, turning it into a completely barren land. Other civilizations of the starry sea might plunder resources, but they plundered the resources themselves, not the environment that gave birth to those resources. However, the insect race was different. Wherever they went, they consumed everything utterly, devastating the value of an entire star domain beyond recovery. In their panic, both men were somewhat at a loss. Although they were both from the First Torch Academy of Zhongyuan and had received orthodox torch education and knew a lot about the notorious insect race, all of this was after all something they had heard of or read about in books. Facing it in person was completely different. In the end, it was Song-Chi, who had lived 2 lifetimes, who was the first to snap back to reality. While recalling various pieces of information about the insect race, he rapidly contacted Shun-Ching through a communication projection. Big Ching, what do you say, fight or run? After his shout, Shun-Ching also collected his thoughts and thought for a moment before replying. Can we roughly determine the number of those insect race members? A conservative estimate puts them at over 30,000, plus there's no telling if the queen insect can continue to lay eggs, Song-Chi replied quickly. It seemed that through the perspective of the drones, he had already reviewed all the information about the insect race above them, but his words were not yet finished. He added quickly. Of course, whether she can lay eggs or not isn't important. There's no excess energy supply in space above, otherwise, this group of insect race members wouldn't have chosen to hibernate collectively. Without an energy supply, even if the eggs hatch, the larvae won't be able to grow quickly, and they won't pose a threat to us. At this point, Shun-Ching interjected. So you're saying, we need to deal with over 30,000 insect race members who have just woken up from hibernation and haven't replenished their energy for a long time? As he spoke, Shun-Ching's message was quite clear, and a trace of eagerness appeared on his face. Song-Chi didn't have much to say in response. He wasn't too keen on taking action. Although the insect race members above were indeed very weak, there were still too many of them, and he did not want to take risks in battling them. However, since Shun-Ching was implying this, Song-Chi couldn't just outright refuse. After all, he could set a beacon and later return to this relic through the Zhution Ruins market. He only needed to wait until he was strong enough, then come back to clear these insect race members, and by that time, all the gains from these ruins would be his alone. But to actually do that would undoubtedly be an act of a petty person, which He naturally didn't want to commit. If the person accompanying him were a complete stranger, or if he had discovered these ruins and brought Shunqing to explore them together rather than the other way around, he would not hesitate and would choose to flee, waiting to return for a second exploration once he was powerful enough. But that wasn't the case. As for Shunqing, who had fully trusted him and whom he had played with since they were kids, he couldn't and didn't want to do such a thing. This wasn't about being sentimental, it was a matter of the principles and bottom line of a normal person. Chapter 80, 75, Insect Race, please subscribe. Chapter 80, Chapter 75, Insect Race, please subscribe. If a person loses even their most basic principles and bottom lines, then even the highest achievements mean nothing in the end. Having made his decision, Song-chi agreed. Alright, let's give it a try. Right, there's also one of those crystal boxes you mentioned in the second layer of space. Hearing the words crystal box, Shunqing's eyes grew even more resolute. The crystal box on the first floor held a blue oddity and several white oddities. The strange objects contained within the crystal box on the second floor could only be more precious. As they were discussing, ripples flashed across the spatial veil in the sky above, followed by a torrent of insect race creatures, half a meter high and nearly a meter long, falling from the sky. These insectoids were dark greenish-black, their entire bodies wrapped in hard shells, with the mouthparts at the front of their heads especially fierce. The cold light flickered with each opening and closing, more terrifying than the sharpest clamps. The top of the spatial veil where the insectoids fell was hundreds of meters above the first floor's ground. These creatures didn't have wings or anything, so Song-chi and Shunqing initially thought that falling from such a height, surely hundreds would perish, but the hardness of the insectoids' shells was far beyond their expectations. Despite falling from a height of hundreds of meters, they were unscathed upon hitting the ground. Emitting strange hisses from their mouthparts, they swiftly charged toward the Zhongqiong and Qingfeng. Upon seeing this, the spectral airships unleashed their main cannons and secondary cannons with all their might, firing powerful beams that easily tore through the insects' prized hard shells. The thickness of the insectoids' shells was indeed remarkable, but that was only relative to other creatures or attack methods of the same rank. Most of these insectoids were zero rank, and under the barrage of first-rank torch warships, their so-called shells were no more than a slightly thicker film, which, no matter how substantial compared to ordinary films, couldn't withstand a single blow. Suddenly, limbs and body parts flew in all directions, a dark green blood splattered everywhere, and the entire first layer of space began to fill with a foul stench. The blood of these insectoids was dark green and carried a strong stench. As it piled up, a dense green poisonous fog enveloped the entire closed space, and in an already dark environment, visibility became utterly impossible. It was now only through the spectral airship's thermal scanners that the number of insectoids below, which had not decreased at all but seemed to be increasing, could be clearly tracked. The particle beam cannons of Zhongqiong and the shipborne main cannons of Qingfeng emitted ray-based attacks. These attacks had excellent penetration and range, but the drawback was their difficulty in causing widespread damage. This put them at a significant disadvantage when facing enemies known for their numbers. If it weren't for the nearly infinitely repeating secondary cannons, the number of insectoids in this layer of space would likely be even greater. As the two grappled with their predicament, an alert from the semi-automatic intelligent brain aboard the ship compounded their troubles. Beep, 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 warning, the concentration of the external poison fog has reached first rank. Due to exposure to the poison fog, the energy shield is beginning to decrease. Originally, the two airships floated hundreds of meters in the air, enjoying a natural geographical advantage. Even with numerous insectoids below, it was difficult for them to reach them, ensuring their safety in both offensive and defensive postures. But now, with their high-altitude geographical advantage about to vanish, the outside poison fog had spread throughout the enclosed space. No matter where the two airships hid, they couldn't avoid the fog that had reached a pollution level of first rank. Big Chin, we are going up. There are already over 20,000 insectoids on this layer, there shouldn't be many left on the second layer. In a crisis, Song-chi proposed a countermeasure. The two agreed instantly, piloting their airship straight through the second layer's spatial veil. Above, a continuous stream of insectoids still poured out of the spatial veil, their sticky bodies and sharp mouthparts making for a particularly disgusting sight. After exchanging a glance, the engines at the rear of both airships roared, propelling the two airships upwards. Thump, thump, thump. Insectoids continuously collided with the energy shield of Songcheong, causing ripples across the shield before being quickly deflected. The insectoids weren't stupid, exerting much effort to control their densely packed limbs to stabilize their bodies. Their fierce mouthparts also frantically gnawed at the shield. The surface layers of Songcheong's energy shield began to flicker continuously, and the shield value decreased much faster than before. Are you kidding? What's known as swallowing everything? Wasn't it their horrifying mouthparts? Even if only a group of zero-rank insectoids, the power of their mouthparts was still extraordinary, even if the energy shield components on Songcheong were of orange glory quality. Looking at Ching Feng's situation appeared even worse. Under the gnawing of some zero-rank insectoids, the brightness of Ching Feng's shield had already dimmed by half, and it looked like it wouldn't be long before it overloaded completely. Search the novel_fire.8 website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Fortunately, this situation didn't last long. Braving the falling tide of insects, both airships quickly crossed the spatial veil into the brighter second layer of space. Song-Chi quickly increased the altitude of the airships, soon regaining distance from the swarm of insects below. At a glance, Shen-Qing quickly understood why Song-Chi had shown such an expression earlier. Compared to a swarm of thousands of insectoids, these overwhelmingly torn remnants from below, resembling giant eggs, seemed far more bone-chilling. Chapter 81, Chapter 75, Insect Race. Please subscribe, _2. It's hard to imagine just how fascinating the expression on my face would have been if during the last exploration, the second layer's spatial veil had actually been opened. Just as Shen-Qing felt goosebumps all over his body, Song-Chi's voice suddenly came through. We must figure out a way to kill that queen insect fast, he said. Hearing the words queen insect, Shen-Qing's gaze shifted, looking toward the eye-catching, several tens of meters tall tumorous nest in the distance. Judging from the height of this tumorous nest, the rank of the queen insect inside should not be too high. After all, the bodies of the insect race's queens are extremely bloated and massive, far surpassing common insects of the same rank. According to the official data of Torch Human Civilization, a zero-rank queen insect typically has a size within 10 meters, while a first-rank queen insect can often grow to several tens of meters, and the size of some peak first-rank queen insects can even reach nearly 100 meters. Clearly, the rank of the queen insect before them is most likely not above second rank. Creatures of such rank shouldn't normally cause two first-rank torch warships to be so worried, but the key point here is that this is a queen insect. Even a queen insect without sufficient energy supply, whose eggs don't pose much of a threat, is not something other creatures of the same rank can compare with. Apart from the ability to lay eggs in large quantities in short cycles, most queen insects typically control a highly powerful and elite insect guard legion. Every insect in this guard legion will be the strongest and highest ranked in the entire nest. They didn't know if the queen insect in the second layer of the ruins had such a guard legion. If there wasn't one, that would naturally be good news. But if there was, it meant they still hadn't been awakened, because so far, no first-rank insects had been seen among the tens of thousands that had already awakened. Search the novelfire.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. To prevent the appearance of this uncertain insect guard legion, they must act fast. After all, just the tens of thousands of zero-rank insects had already caused them enough headaches. If an elite army of first-rank insects were to join the fray, their chances of getting the item in the crystal box not far away would most likely be virtually zero. Without further discussion, both men exchanged a glance and then nodded to each other. They immediately stopped clearing the unbroken smaller insect nest below, and their airships dashed straight towards the huge tumorous mass a kilometer ahead. At the same time, they turned their guns and once again opened fire full blast at the giant tumorous mass. However, the subsequent result was a big surprise for both of them, and their expressions turned particularly ugly. Damn it, how could a first-rank queen insect's nest be so sturdy? Song-Chi grumbled through clenched teeth. The main cannons of the Songcheong and Qingfeng, both first-rank, could only leave a very shallow mark on the giant nest, which was completely unexpected for the two of them. Meanwhile, in the communication projection, the image of Song-Chi spoke up. It's indeed impossible for a first-rank queen insect's nest to be so sturdy unless this queen insect was more than first-rank when it first built the nest. Riding on this hypothesis, both men proceeded to speculate and eventually found that the more they deduced, the more reasonable it became. It was then that they determined the specific situation of this queen insect. According to their deductions, this queen insect had been trapped in this enclosed space for quite a while. With the lack of energy supply over the years, to maintain its own life, the queen insect had to consume the energy stored in its body, and its bloated form gradually decreased over time. As the energy in its body was consumed to a certain extent to make up for the continuously diminishing body energy, the oversized nest also began to slowly reduce until finally, both the queen insect and the nest itself shrunk to their current size of several tens of meters. Having speculated this far, the two were largely convinced of the outcome and, at the same time, their resolve to deal with the queen insect as soon as possible grew even stronger. A queen insect whose rank was very likely second rank, third rank, or even higher, even though it had lost most of its life energy due to various reasons and had now fallen to first rank status, was still not something that could be measured by ordinary first rank creatures. If they failed to kill it now, Song-Chi and Shun-Ching themselves might soon find themselves in grave danger. Since the remote bombardment was ineffective, the two decided to let the airship continue to approach and carry out a sustained bombardment at close range on the same spot, not believing that they would still be unable to break through the flesh wall of this nest. As Tsang-Cheong and Ching-Fong swiftly approached, the rows of flesh tumor nest below burst simultaneously, and then a host of new insect creatures, vastly different from the tens of thousands previously encountered, suddenly appeared. It's the splatterbugs, watch out for dodging. Song-Chi, who identified them immediately, warned loudly. Unlike the previous ironclad bugs with extremely hard shells, these splatterbugs didn't have tough shells or incredible strength, but they could spit a highly corrosive acid. Even though textbooks often mention that zero-rank splatterbugs have a limited range of acid ejection, this was only relative to the vast starry sea. In this enclosed space, less than a kilometer in height, the acid spewed by the splatterbugs could cover any position. The two swiftly advancing airships suddenly halted and began to constantly rotate, dodging the dense acid shooting from below. The corrosive nature of this acid was alarming, and with thousands of splatterbugs below, plus the fact that both spectral warships had already lost a significant amount of shield value, if they were to charge through bluntly, Song-Cheong might have been okay, but Shun-Ching's Ching-Fong would definitely not hold up. The energy shield was bound to be completely overloaded. But then another problem arose. The giant fleshy tumor nest in the distance had begun to tremble lightly. The queen insect inside was awakening. If they were delayed too long by these splatterbugs, they would miss the chance to eliminate the queen insect ahead of time. Once the queen insect was fully awake, leaving aside whether Song-Cheong and Ching-Fong could clean up all the insect race, including the queen insect, even if possible, it would definitely take a long time. With less than 10 hours left before their return, even if all the insect creatures were eliminated afterward, there would be no time left to open the crystal box. Considering how Ching-Fong took over 10 hours to fully break the crystal box's seal last time, even with Song-Cheong and Ching-Fong working together, it would require at least 5 hours, making it simply impossible to meet the time constraint. Just as Shun-Ching was struggling with the decision, Song-Chi spoke up first. "Big Chin, maybe we should retreat. Without area of effect main cannons, it's hard to break through this net of splatterbugs attacks in a short time." It wasn't that Song-Chi had an ulterior motive, but under the current circumstances, either they could make an all-out attempt with a low success rate that was likely to involve great risk afterward, or they would simply give up this exploration. In any case, a decision had to be made quickly. Hesitating would only increase the danger for both spectral warships. Seemingly stimulated by the word retreat uttered by Song-Chi, the indecision in Shun-Ching's eyes finally turned into resolve. He wanted to try. If the first layer of the relic contained a blue-quality starry sea oddity, then the object sealed in the crystal box on the second layer must be of even higher quality. As someone who had only awakened a colorless seed of torch and was firmly stuck at first rank, Shun-Ching was naturally not satisfied. In just one short year, he had upgraded Ching-Fong to a first-rank spectral airship, and as long as he cultivated methodically, breaking through to level 10 of the spectral energy guidance technique was virtually a given. But that was all he could do. The colorless quality seed of torch ensured that Qingfeng could never cross the threshold of the spectral warship and reach the domain of the Guardian-class spectral spaceship. Consequently, the ghost energy cultivation platform bound to the warship's own rank would also be destined to only reach level 19. A mere level 19 cultivation platform would make it very hard for him to break through level 20 of the spectral energy guidance technique and achieve a second life sublimation in the 160+ years to come. Therefore, at the end of the day, it was necessary to upgrade the quality of the seed of torch. But how difficult was it to upgrade the quality of a seed of torch? Without a massive opportunity, an ordinary first-rank torch warship would not be able to gather enough resources to purchase an upgrade for a fire seed in a lifetime. What is a great opportunity? Shunqing may not know others, but he definitely considered what was sealed in the crystal box on the second layer to be one. If the first layer could reveal a blue-quality starry sea oddity, then it was very likely that the second layer's crystal box contained a purple-quality strange object. With this thought, Shunqing turned his head to Song Qi on the communication screen and said, "Little Qi, that I want to try." Chapter 82, Chapter 76. External Deep Space Torpedo Launcher. Happy New Year's Eve. Song Qi could understand Shunqing's thoughts and knew that his situation was different from his own. Without a second-rank father or a third-rank grandfather, he had to acquire any resources he needed on his own. Knowing that there were at least 2 blue oddities inside the crystal box below, it was inevitable that Shunqing would crave them in the face of such temptation. However, understanding is one thing, as Song Qi was not going to blindly agree. He had to be certain that Shunqing had a complete and reasonable plan to ensure a good chance of taking down the queen insect's nest, rather than just recklessly gambling on a whim. Otherwise, it wouldn't be helping Shunqing but allowing him to walk to his death, and there was a high probability it would drag Song Qi down as well. Naturally, Song Qi wouldn't allow that to happen. "Big Qing, are you sure? If this is a decision you've carefully considered, I'll support you, but I need to know your follow-up plan, or rather the exact method you'll use to deal with that queen insect's nest, if..." Before he could finish, Shunqing suddenly raised the height of the Qingfeng, allowing Song Qi to look from the angle of the Tsongqiong and see directly underneath the hull of the Qingfeng. A flicker of surprise crossed Song Qi's eyes. He hadn't noticed before, but there was a neat groove beneath the hull of the Qingfeng, and within that groove, a peculiar device hung prominently. Just as he tried to get a better look at what the device really was, Shunqing's explanation came through the communication screen. An external mounting device, the white-quality Deep Space Torpedo Launcher, one of the white components I got on the first floor of the ruins. Due to this component, I specifically brought 2 military Tomahawk deep space torpedoes, which I originally planned to save for the crystal box, but now I have to use them in advance. Hearing this, Song Qi's previously hesitant heart immediately firmed up. Military Tomahawk deep space torpedoes could only be bought on the black market, and they didn't come cheap. One would cost hundreds of strands of zero-rank floating land origin. The key issue was that these torpedoes were generally slow to launch, making it difficult to hit fast-moving targets. But opposite to their launching speed was their might. If they hit a target up close, they could explode with the power of a second-rank energy level, posing a major threat to second-rank starry sea lifeforms. The queen insect had not fully awakened yet. Deep in its nest, it was immobile and nearly perfectly suited for the deep space torpedo's conditions of use. And since there was a deep space torpedo with second-rank might, Song Qi naturally wouldn't abstract any further. Seeing Song Qi agreed, Shunqing excitedly said again, "Little Qi, I need you to get me over there." The remaining shield value of the Qingfeng's energy shield was not enough to withstand the corrosive acid spray net of the thousands of splattering insects below. It was necessary to have the support of the blue energy shield of the Tsongqiong. Song Qi nodded. "You maneuver the Qingfeng to stick above me, so that 90% of the acid attacks should be avoided." After finalizing the action plan, Shunqing quickly manipulated the Qingfeng to hover right above the Tsongqiong. The two airships were nearly identical in size, and, aligning together like this, the Tsongqiong seemed to become a thicker version of an airship. Meanwhile, with the Tsongqiong blocking from below, the Qingfeng was subjected to far fewer acid attacks than the decline in the energy shield's shield value finally slowed. Humming. Below, the engines of the Tsongqiong roared, withstanding countless acid attacks as it charged straight toward the queen insect's nest. When it was less than a kilometer away from the nest, the Qingfeng separated from the Zhongqiong and immediately, the two airships went off in completely opposite directions. The Qingfeng continued to approach the queen insect's nest. Due to the launch speed of the deep space torpedo, to ensure no accidents, it had to get as close as possible. On the other hand, the Zhongqiong returned the way it came, needing to continue distracting the thousands of splattering insects to prevent them from effecting the Qingfeng's launching action. Soon, the Zhongqiong once again plunged into the web of corrosive acid attacks. While constantly using the particle beam cannon and spectral cannon to clear the splattering insects below, Song-Chi was also keeping an eye on Shunqing's situation. Saw the novel, f.net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. With the Zhongqiong drawing attention, although there were still many insects around the Qingfeng, there were only a few dozen splattering insects, too few to threaten the Qingfeng effectively in the short term. Seeing this, Song-Chi completely relaxed and began to focus on dealing with the splattering insects below. As for the thousands of ironclad insects remaining in this second layer space, Song-Chi largely ignored them. Ironclad insects didn't have long-range attack capabilities and could only make weird, squeaking noises from below. Shield value 17409/29184. Glancing at the dark matter energy shield's shield value, which had endured the nibbling of ironclad insects and continuous attacks from the thousands of splattering insects, there was still nearly 60% of the shield value remaining. Seeing this, Song-Chi couldn't help but thank the mechanical race once again. Ever since the orange quality dark matter energy shield generator was installed, it had played a crucial role at critical moments several times. And not just now, but also during the recent effort to advance in the ruins market. While reflecting, another 2 minutes passed, and Song-Chi continued to maneuver the Zhongqiong, dodging around while turning his attention back to the Qingfeng. But before his concentration could be diverted, a sudden, intense booming sound erupted, filling the entire second layer space. Immediately after, a huge shockwave surged from the direction where the Qingfeng was located, pushing the originally stable Zhongqiong a short distance away. Chapter 83, Chapter 76, The External Deep Space Torpedo Launcher, Happy New Year's Eve, _2. Knowing that the explosion was caused by a deep space torpedo, Song-Chi did not panic. He steadied the Zhongqiong again and turned to look at the communication screen. The closed space was only several kilometers in both length and width, and the distance between the Zhongqiong and the Qingfeng was less than a kilometer. They had not left the magnetic field stand of a spectral airship, so the communication between them had not been cut off. How is it? On the communication screen, Shunqing's expression looked somewhat ugly. Seeing this, Song-Chi already had his answer. Did it miss? Shunqing shook his head, indicating it was not a miss, which made Song-Chi even more puzzled. It hit but didn't destroy. How is that possible? A second-rank deep space torpedo hit head-on. Even a life form at the peak of second rank would have to shed a layer of skin. Could the queen insect have been third rank before hibernation? Does the nest it built have third rank strength? With his puzzled words, Shunqing in the projection nodded. That's right, the queen insect must have been third rank at her peak. While they were speaking, their expressions suddenly changed. A deep, hoarse cry came from the queen insect's nest, and the next moment, the several tens of meters high nest began to shake violently. Having been hit directly by a deep space torpedo, the queen insect was clearly fully awakened and was doing everything in its power to break through the outer wall of its nest. This development startled both of them. They knew that at its peak, the creature had been a third-rank lifeform. And with its elite insect guards under its command, once it fully awakened, not to mention clearing out all of the insect race, it would be difficult for the two of them to even escape. Moreover, there was bad news. With the queen insect's cry from the nest, nearly 10,000 zero-rank ironclad insects and splash insects seemed to have been called, their eyes turning completely blood-red, no longer paying attention to the Zhongqiong above, and frantically rushing towards the queen insect's nest. Clearly, the queen insect was summoning its offspring. In the midst of the alarm, Shunqing suddenly spoke out. Little Chi, hold on with all your might for a little while longer, not too long, just 30 seconds. Although the military deep space torpedo hadn't completely blasted through the wall of the nest, it had created a large hole. Just one more strike, and even the queen insect, which had once been a third-rank life entity, would be severely injured. No matter what level it had once been, now it only had the power of first rank, and a second-rank deep space torpedo was enough to pose a lethal threat to it. Hearing this, Song-Chi's expression changed as he glanced at the dark matter energy shield's shield value. 9405/29184. Seeing that there were nearly 10,000 points left, he did not hesitate further and gritted his teeth in agreement. In the sky, the Song-Chiong opened fire with both main and secondary guns at full force, striving to block the insect tide crazily surging towards the queen insect's nest below. In the urgency of the moment, Song-Chi even opened the hatch, allowing 10 LV-15 Fire Peony soldier figurines clad in exoskeleton armor to jump out of the airship and block the tens of thousands of insect rays with their puppet bodies. But no matter how he blocked, he couldn't completely stop this group of insects that had fallen into an extreme frenzy. The 10 fully armed first-rank Fire Peony soldier figurines were completely overwhelmed by the swarm within less than 5 seconds. Without absolutely crushing power, there was no making a splash against an absolutely crushing number. Seeing that the insect tide was getting closer to the queen insect's nest below, Song-Chi bit his teeth fiercely, and the next second, the engines of the Song-Chiong dimmed as the entire airship descended toward the ground. Boom! The nearly 20-meter-long warship landed on the stone ground, causing a dull impact sound. At the same time, the warship effectively blocked the insect tide's advance. Song-Chi desperately intended to use the Song-Chiong warship's own body to block the insect swarm so as to delay them as long as possible. Buzz. 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 One after another, the iron-armored insects smashed against the energy shield, their ferocious mouthparts gnawing tirelessly, globes of corrosive acid splashing against the defensive light screen, hissing fiercely upon contact. In just a few seconds, Song-Chi witnessed with his own eyes the shield value of the dark matter energy shield generator plummet from 10,000 nearly vertically down to 6,000, then to 5,000, 4,000, 3,000. When the shield value of the dark matter energy shield fell below 2,500 points, he once again fully activated the assaulter engine, and soon the Song-Chiong rose into the air again. This step was already his bottom line. He could not truly let the dark matter energy shield generator overload, otherwise, if there were any accidents later on, there would be no room to maneuver at all. However, thankfully, after the blockade by the Song-Chiong's hull, the insect tide was further delayed by nearly 10 seconds. Combined with the time delayed before, although it wasn't half a minute, it was rather close. Seconds later, before the insect horde had even reached the queen insect's nest, the second military deep space torpedo launched from the Qingfeng sailed through the previously blasted gap and shot directly into the interior of the gigantic tumor-like nest. Boom. 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 A second later, violent explosions erupted from within the queen's nest, and amidst the blast, Song-Chi thought he could faintly hear the slight but intense shrieks of agony. Even the iron-armored insects and scattering insects that surged towards the nest outside were affected by the blast. Nearly 10,000 from the insect race were enveloped in the explosion of the deep space torpedo and were instantly vaporized. Regarding this, the two aboard the Song-Chiong merely considered it an unexpected delight. After the might of the explosion dissipated, the two began controlling the airship to quickly eliminate those insects that had survived the explosion. As for the queen's nest that was half blown open, they did not explore it rashly but decided to first clear out all zero-rank insects. See the novel F.8 website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Who knew if the deep space torpedo had completely killed off the queen? After all, it was once a third-rank life entity, and even if various reasons had caused its life energy to fall, its physical strength would not weaken along with that. A second-rank mite's deep space torpedo might not necessarily be able to completely kill it off. Another 20 minutes went by, and all the other insects in the second-level space had been cleared, but Song-Chi and his companions still did not bother with the queen's nest. Instead, they controlled the airship above that crystal box of unknown material before launching an all-out firepower strike. Due to the material or perhaps some special reinforcement by the Buluo civilization, the crystal box was extremely hard, so even with two spectral airships attacking at full force, it would still take at least 5 hours to break it. As time passed second by second, compared to the repelling stance on the spatial veil on the first level, the two of them were clearly more motivated at this moment. Just thinking of the starry sea oddities locked within the crystal box, they could not hide the excitement in their eyes. Of course, while continuing to fire, they also did not forget their vigilance towards the queen's nest. It was time to harvest their results, and they certainly did not want any reverses at this juncture. 1 hour. 3 hours. 6 hours. Quickly, 7 hours had passed. The anticipation of the two had already been replaced by tension. With less than 2 hours left for their return, if they could not shatter the crystal cube in the next hour or so, their efforts over the past 20-odd hours would be completely in vain. Fortunately, things did not truly progress to that stage. Another 20 minutes later, with a crack, the previously intact crystal cube suddenly shattered into pieces which then turned into powder and dissipated in the enclosed space. Ignoring the transformation of the fragments, their gaze shifted from the shattered crystal cube to the several dazzling lights hovering below. White, blue, and amongst the mix, the most conspicuous was that striking purple hue. Clearly, the strange objects left in this second-level space were not only of white and blue quality but also included a purple-level relic. However, there was also a piece of bad news. Among the 5 glowing objects, there was only 1 purple relic. Of the remaining 4, there were 2 white and 2 blue relics. My dear readers, Happy New Year's Eve. Part 5 of the series ends here. Thank you for watching and listening. If you find it interesting, please give us a like, a comment and a subscription so that we have the motivation to make the next videos.